sat in meetings with him in the past.
He told me just to keep him away last week.
Yeah.
We'll work.
I'm watching my clock here. It says 8:59. If anybody's wondering what there we go. Now we got 9 o'clock. I'd like to call this special call meeting to order. Today's date is Friday, November the 30th, 2018. It's 9 a.m. Debbie, if you could have a roll call, please.
Councilman Young.
Here.
Councilman Cordier.
Here.
Vice Mayor O'Neill. Here. Councilman Schoner.
Here.
Mayor Hall.
Here.
City Attorney Simpson.
Not here. Hopefully he's on his way.
Hopefully.
Okay. Well, we're not going to wait on him. We have interviews today. We're going to turn the page in South Daytona. Like I said last night, when good or bad, we're going to turn the page. So the first interview is scheduled for 9 a.m. Mr. Gillis, you're up. I thought we would each pick a couple of questions from the list of things we were given previously. Vice Mayor, we could start with you.
Actually, mine's not from the list. We
Okay.
touched a little on urban planning yesterday.
Oh, yes, absolutely. First off, good morning. My name's Les Gillis, for those in the audience that do not know me. 15-year employee here with the city. Started out 2003 as the Assistant Public Works Director. Was promoted to Public Works Director in 2009. And from then, took on the Deputy City Manager's role starting last year. So it's an honor to be here before you. To get to your question, Vice Mayor, urban planning. We don't really have a true planner on staff. And what we're lacking in this city is along US 1, we have a lot of vacant properties. We have a lot of underutilized businesses that are out there, and it's really going to be important to market those properties, to try and improve development. I think if we can get some little pockets of nice development, the in-betweens will fill in. If we get the condo unit, the retail, the restaurants will come in, and that's what's needed. We need to devote more time to urban planning. I'm a firm believer that we need to hire a marketing firm or investigate hiring a marketing firm so we can start marketing these properties we have in South Daytona. We just don't run in the developers' circles. The other cities do. So I know at one time we utilized a marketing firm, I think for a few months, and I really want to pursue that avenue to try to bring development, new development, a shot in the arm in this city.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Schoner? Did you say one or two questions, or?
You can ask as many as you can.
What's going to be your approach on the budget as far as our
That's a really good question.
Our debt?
As it stands right now, and I've spent many hours with the current finance director, we need to improve our overall net position. We have a lot of debt. We need to work on reducing that debt in the future. We need to go line item by line item on these budgets and reduce our expenditures. Put more of that money. Good morning, Scott. Put more of that money into reducing our debt, into our budget, We also need to continue building our reserves. I think we're on track to have close to $1 million by as soon as they finish tallying the end of last fiscal year. And when we have these hurricanes and events, it's 1.25 to 1.5 million for the cleanup and restoration. And I know when we did a hurricane cleanup, we were unfortunate. We had Hurricane Matthew 3 years ago. Then it was followed up by Hurricane Irma, which back-to-back hurricanes really put us in a bind financially with this city and our small budget. When we took out a loan for Hurricane Matthew, we were able to go through Wells Fargo, our primary bank. For Hurricane Irma, we had to go to a second-tier bank, Compass Bank. When you start deviating from your primary bank and go to second and third-tier banks, the interest rate could go up, and the amount of risk certainly does. So we need to build up and get to a point where we have these healthy reserves so that when we do have a hurricane, we can fund the improvements without taking a costly loan.
And your feelings about mid-year budget adjustments?
Yes. I believe we need to spend more time at the beginning of a fiscal year and truly establishing an accurate budget for the next fiscal year. And then when things come up, if it's a dire need, we can make a mid-year budget adjustment. But and we definitely want to listen to our residents and receive their input. But when it's not a budgeted item or when it's infeasible, some of the requests we have to be in a position to say no on and give an explanation why. So we need to reduce some of these mid-year budget amendments so that we can keep our overall budget as you first saw it at the beginning of a fiscal year, true and steady throughout that course of that year.
Thank you.
Les, how do you,
Cordia.
go ahead. How do you keep the mayor and the council informed on the city activities and operations?
That's another good question. I consider the council my greatest allies. I think developing a partnership between all of us is what's going to be important for whoever you choose as the next city manager. So council information needs to be timely, it needs to be accurate, and really, as a partnership, the city manager has to seek your counsel on which way, which way you're leaning on certain items. I'm a big proponent of keeping the council informed. I even have ideas of coming in with a council packet. Maybe we can do it monthly. I know Ormond Beach does that, where it keeps you up to date on everything that's going on in the city. And certainly, if you choose me, I will be in direct contact with each of you and let you know the progress of our city. But council contact is going to be vital for whoever takes this position.
Councilman Young?
So, Les, I think we all know you. We all got to spend time with each of the candidates yesterday, and you're in that, it's an internal candidate versus an external candidate. And I think for most of us all up here in our professional careers, we've been promoted within our own organization, and that creates some of its challenges. And I know in our one-on-one, we kind of talked about that. And so I guess my question is, you have that unique situation of being in the audience, being part of administration, being part of the leadership. And for some, I had people last night, the meet and greet, pull me off to the side, and some love where the city's going, some okay, some not. I mean, that's going to be natural if you have a group of people, more than 3 in a room. We had more than that last night. So I guess my question is around that. It puts you in a unique situation. You'll have some people who, if you are the candidate selected, they'll want to see massive change. So some will say, I want status quo, and some others. And that puts you in that. You obviously have been a subordinate of a leader who's been here for 3+ decades in your time here. So I just want to, it's kind of an open-ended question around what do you see as a vision of how do you see your role in engaging with the council, engaging with the citizens, and how that might look different, look the same, or just be a variant from that?
Oh, okay. That's another good question. First off, let me start off with the staff. Because, coming from that level. And I know staff couldn't, or most of the staff couldn't be here today because they're working. But I know this is all live streamed, and I know some of them are listening, and I want to let those people know that there will be changes, and these changes will take place immediately. I can't do it all, but I can create the culture and provide staff the tools so that they can do it. And when our staff succeeds, then the residents just reap those benefits and rewards. So I want to address the staff issue that way. As far as being in this position as city manager and receiving resident input, it's vital that we receive resident input. I even have ideas of doing a visioning meeting. I don't think we've done those in a long time to see what direction the residents want us to go in. We need to bring in new development and yet keep our small town charm. And new development will come. Daytona is developing. Port Orange is developing. New Smyrna is developing. And I believe that we can ride that wave and make that happen in this city. But resident input's going to be valued. We require resident input to accurately know which direction the city goes in. But as stated before, when items aren't budgeted, when they're infeasible, when there's a neighbor dispute that we have gotten involved in tremendous amount of time, police, code, we must say no. We must say, I'm sorry, this isn't feasible for this reason, or there's an unbudgeted item. We can look at budgeting that next year, see what the council thinks about those items next year. But citizen support, citizen input's vital to our cause here. But we must be able to say, stand firm, we have a set budget, and be able to say no. My dad always said, no is a perfectly acceptable answer to any question, and he told us that all our lives. Every time all of us kids, oh, come on, Dad, no is a perfectly acceptable answer.
Let me ask one last question for right now. The redevelopment or not redevelopment, so it speaks to kind of what you're talking about with the citizen feedback.
Correct.
I've set up here, and I got, I think my very first council meeting, I had a packed house, and it was all about condos and high, and there was a lot of passion around that. We had some passion around the FPO acquisition, so you'll have some of that, finding the right balance with that. So with that comes, where do you see, and it piggybacks a little bit on Councilwoman or Vice Mayor O'Neill's comments, where do you see us needing the development in a limited commercial area?
Our US 1 corridor is our prime commercial corridor. We have a lot of vacant properties. It is, I think that's prime for development. A lot of it's on the river. Palmetto Avenue is a completely unique street in this city, and I think most communities it would be totally unique. We have the nice homes, well-kept yards on the river, obviously, and then directly across the street we have we have apartment complexes, which some of them are Section 8 and not being maintained. On one instance, you have nice cars on one side of the road, and in some instances, you want people that are going to take those nice cars. So we have to do a better job of code enforcing those properties on Palmetto. I think Palmetto will be the key to US 1 developing. And like I said before, if we can create pockets in this city of nice, good, well-maintained luxury development, then the in-between properties which are vacant, the in-between businesses which may be underutilized or underperforming will come to the city. I know we had an apartment complex come before you guys a couple of council meetings ago. I don't think we did a good enough job presenting that apartment complex to you. Didn't come with the staff recommendation. We didn't tell you where the people in those apartments were going to recreate, eat, go to school. We didn't even know what schools are zoned for. You need to know that. People that want to live there would like to know that. And so we need to do a better job of presenting these projects to you with a complete set of information and with the staff recommendation. So you're not up here arguing about architectural details. Hopefully those will all be worked out before we bring those to you.
So, Les, I'm gonna go back to a question that was asked by Councilman Young. You talked about staff and visions and your role,
Yes.
and one of the things that jumps out at me is obviously all the years I worked here and all the years that I've lived here. So, what are our strengths as far as a community, as far as staff, and what are our weaknesses? And I don't want to hold your feet to the fire, but I would like a little more definition on some of the changes you're proposing.
Okay,
What are
absolutely.
you thinking about?
All right, our strengths. I firmly believe that we have a lot of technical knowledge on staff. But sometimes when we use that technical knowledge, we sometimes avoid or don't include the public in our information. It's almost like the public is bothering us during our daily activities. I know the last couple of years we've kind of been in a crisis mode every day. There's been items brought up that ties staff up on a daily basis each and every day. And it doesn't allow us to get what our normal workload, or to plan ahead, or to get ahead of our work assignments. So that's where I see some of the changes that need to be made, and change is good. I want to make sure that you understand that. I know people are resistant to change, but I think in this situation, judging from the public last night, I think change is a good thing for this city. And fresh eyes on the budget, fresh eyes on citizen input, fresh eyes on code enforcement. Fresh eyes, a big issue that is going to come up is the hiring of a police chief, which it'll be whoever gets the city manager's position, it'll be their role to talk with each and every one of you individually and find out what you want and the qualities you want in that police chief. And I was telling some of you yesterday, the person will have to be a leader. I think when we have a strong leader in these departments, the employees tend to get along better. The employees tend to fulfill their roles and their job duties better. So the person has to be a strong leader and be trustworthy. And I'm not just talking about telling the truth. I'm talking about where the city manager can trust that person to reach their accreditation, to manage the department, manage their budget. And so the hiring of a police chief is going to be critical as we move forward. Some of the staff changes that's planned. Our community development department is fractured, so we need to look at that department. And many times the line level personnel they know what's wrong. They know what's holding them back from doing their job. I can't do it all, but like I said, I can create the culture and give them the tools to succeed. And so there's going to be some changes in the community development department. I see our finance department. We need to get back on strong financial footing. We need to go line item by line item in that budget to make sure that the numbers are fairly represented. And our customer service on the utility billing side improves. From what I understand, we're great at billing, but we're awful at collections. And many times our deposit of $225, a standard water user with 2,000 gallons of use, which many of us exceed that, by the time we shut you off, you're already exceed that $225 limit. So we take a loss on everybody that walks away from their, or most everybody that walks away from their water bill. And that needs to change. So.
Okay. So as follow-up with some of the comments you just made, you've been here 15 years. Are you fresh eyes?
Absolutely. I can tell you that, the level of involvement in the budget will, anybody who takes this role, takes this position, whether it's me or whether it's Bill, they need to know right now where we stand. The numbers can say anything. You make the numbers say anything. So that budget, it only behooves the person who takes this position to go line item by line item and justify each expenditure to make sure that what's in that budget is truly accurate.
You okay, or you need a break?
I'm okay. You got me a little worked up there, but we start talking about staff issues. You got me worked up.
Vice Mayor?
What do you feel your biggest challenge is going to be?
Ooh. All right, biggest challenges. The public is divided right now. From the meet and greet last night, I received handshakes and hugs from people who said we're doing great. I received handshakes and hugs from people who said you're going to provide the change that we need. So the public's divided right now. We need to employ a common sense approach to code enforcement. I think that's what's fracturing a lot of the public. So we need to mend those fences. City Hall is also fractured. We need to implement change to bring some harmony to those departments and ensure that we and staff, as staff, are working for the people behind me, the public. And I also believe that there's some, some council mending that needs to be done. And I think I'm the perfect person to handle all three of those. And I believe I can. I believe it's something, I guess anytime there's change, you're going to have those items. But I believe that together we can work and mend all those fences. And that's the state of where we're at right now.
Thank you.
Michelle?
Yeah, I'd like to follow up on a couple points.
Sure.
First of all, I think what everybody's leading up to is you're an independent thinker, and I'm assuming that the leadership you've had above you in the past is not going to influence your forward thinking.
Absolutely. Anybody who gets this position, and in particular me, is going to have to be their own person. Change is needed. We cannot continue with the status quo as it is right now. We will, I know what you're leading to, worked with Joe Yarborough for 15 years, and all of you have worked with him for a number of years, and he's a great mentor. He showed me what to do, but he also showed me at times what not to do. And he'll be the first one to tell you that of that. There's some times where we've done some things that, in hindsight being 20/20, we should not have done. And he'd be the first one to admit, oh, I shouldn't have done that. And so, just the same, in anybody's personal life, your father growing up, you want to be like him. He shows you what to do, but he also shows you what not to do, and you take and you grow from that. So you have to be your own person when you accept this job.
And the other side of that coin is you've been a coworker, friends. Your role is going to be completely different.
That's right.
Sometimes it's not going to be pleasant. Sometimes it will be pleasant. You're good with that.
I am, yes. I understand our roles will be different. I actually look forward to, working with each and every one of you on improving the city. And I think in talks yesterday, each and every one of you have great points, great ideas on how to improve the city. I don't know why we haven't implemented those sooner or earlier, but I'm actually excited to implement the items that all of you have brought up yesterday. And they're all good ideas.
Cordier?
I describe my management style. I think the best decisions come from the most diverse opinions. I know sometimes when we have staff meetings, the atmosphere isn't really great. It's kind of electric, and people are just looking to get out of there without static or without conflict, and that needs to change. We need to have an open roundtable discussion on the decision-making process, open roundtable discussion on the problems and how to solve them. Like I said, I'm a firm believer that the most diverse opinions, when you listen to those and when you incorporate all those in, the best decisions are made. So I would call that my leadership style, the ability to listen to a group of people and make and take all their position into account and make the best decision possible.
Councilman Young?
What's our time frame? 8:45 or 9:45? 10 o'clock. 10 o'clock. Okay.
I can go as long as you want.
Good. Then I'll ask 2 questions. You hinted a little bit about this earlier, but you're talking about the apartment complex and the schools and those things, and that's been a big frustration for me. I think most people know I've been very involved with the Volusia League, the Florida League, and I see great value in the partnership of any municipality, whatever it's 435 of us. We're not all unique, and yet we are. We all need each other. And some of the things you just spoke about of we get the benefits and sometimes the disadvantages of being squeezed in between Daytona and Port Orange, and we can reap the benefits, and sometimes we struggle, and I'm sure my colleagues up here who former law enforcement can speak to that on some different levels. I have been very outspoken and very frustrated with the school board. I think they are the #1 factor, and maybe because of my age, my kids, and I've seen it in my neighborhood, the #1 factor that's driving down our property values. We can sit up here on this dais and work in partnership with the city manager and do all the things we can, but if we are in a perceived or realistic crappy school district, then families put for sale signs when those kids get to school age and they get out of our community, and we lose something with that. So I want to have you speak a bit, because I do think, again, it's maybe a little bit of a softball question because you've been 15 years in public works and stuff, but speak to how you see your role transitioning in needing that partnership with other municipalities as our neighbors. We talked a little bit on our one-off about the quiet zone and how that was, different things. And knowing, I'm fairly confident, I even saw a nodding head to the side to my frustration with the school board also, maybe if you could also speak, knowing that you've got school-age kids and those kind of things.
Absolutely. I'm 45 years old. During the course of my lifetime, I've seen the primary decision-making on a house go from where it's located, what neighborhood it's in, what the amenities are, to go to one of the things up at the very top being what school zone am I, what school am I zoned for, and what's the rating on that school. Everybody I talk to, that's become one of the primary focuses for people who have young families. South Daytona, elementary here. I know the rating has been down, and I've participated in that meeting that the council had with them. And the biggest thing they say, and I can totally understand it and get it, is getting kids to school. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that if you're not in school, you're not going to succeed. So I think that we definitely maybe need to work a partnership with them or something to get these kids to school. Is it a problem with getting them there? Is it, their sidewalks not wide enough? Are they not safe enough? Are you not dropping your kids off? Is the pick-up and drop-off loop too onerous? We need to get these kids here. I think once they're there, once they're put in an environment where there's not 50 kids in a classroom, where each kid is valued, and we're not just coaching or teaching to 3 or 4 kids in the class. I think if we implement those items, our school rating will go up, and I believe once our school rating will go up, you'll see a lot of these homes turn over, where you might have a lot of owners that are older and hanging on because they cannot sell the house. And since they're trying to sell their house, they're certainly not going to pump in a lot of money to improve it. I think once our school ratings go up, you're going to see a lot of these homes, particularly smaller homes, for these starter families, improving, flipping, improving. And that is the key, bringing our school rating up. Like I said, in my lifetime, it's the pendulum swung where now the school rating is the primary factor on where you move, where you relocate, particularly when you have a family.
A follow-up question. Sometimes people like to talk, 10 years out, this, that, and the other. There's so many other factors out of our control or in our control that sometimes can affect this. So let me say maybe a 3 to 5 year horizon. If you're selected for the position, what do you think we would see as a council and as citizens different in this city, optimally 3 to 5 years out, and maybe even realistically 3 to 5 years out? And they can be two different things. Optimally, if everything's lined up. We all know, those of us on this council who lived through the Great Recession, we know we had everything planned up and queued up, and things out of our control affected that. So an optimal and maybe even a realistic.
Okay. First and foremost, and I can't preach this enough, it's code enforcement. I think a more common sense to code enforcement, a more rational approach will, and that couples in with community policing and being involved in the community. Our firefighters are involved. I'd love to see our police get more involved. Firefighters are a great face for our city. I'd love to see the police get more involved. I'd love to see them go to the schools, go to these functions, say, here we are, rather than, do you know how fast you were going? Or sticking a ticket on your vehicle for being a foot into the sidewalk overnight. I think the common sense code enforcement is what's fractionalizing the city, so we need to do a better job, or the lack of common sense. We need to do a better job of our code enforcement. There's ways to do it. There's ways to maintain good properties, good homes, good yards, adequate parking, other than just citing everybody and sending them before the special magistrate. I think some education, some discussions will go a long way, rather than anonymously sticking a ticket on someone's vehicle. The development. We have a lot of vacant properties on US 1. We haven't had a lot of business turnover there. Daytona has had an explosion with one Daytona. Port Orange expanding out west. New Smyrna is exploding. I know geographically we're in a tough location. We're waiting for Riverwalk, Port Orange, to ignite, to start to develop, and that'll help our southern corridor. But I think we can be the lead to that charge. Instead of waiting for them to develop, let us go in there. Let us get these projects that we're looking for over on that side of the city and watch that Riverwalk pop up then. I think that's the challenge that the Riverwalk is having, is they're kind of up against our vacant properties, and the draw is not there. I think if we don't wait, we don't sit back, we take that charge, we market these properties, we adequately develop them with nice, whether it be condos or apartment complexes, we can enhance our development, we can enhance our US 1 corridor, and we can still maintain our small town charm. That's going to be important. As development moves forward, we are a small town. We shouldn't run from that. We should embrace that. And I still believe that we can try, when we go through in this redevelopment process, to come up with a legitimate downtown area. Or we can say, this is downtown South Daytona. I think we're lacking that right now. But that's where I see the vision, 3 to 5 years. And whoever gets this position has got to start now. These changes have got to occur immediately. in order for us to get back on that right track so we can achieve those goals in 3 to 5 years instead of 8 to 10.
You know, sitting in this position, I get to make comments on the way other questions were answered. And there's a couple things I'm not real clear of, so I'm going to give you the opportunity
Absolutely.
to expand on some others' questions. But to talk about the schools, we're not talking about the elementary school. I think what most people see is we're going to help South Daytona move up. The zoning issues, I think, is what we're all alluding to. It's not about people living in South Daytona going to South Daytona Elementary. It's that next step. I know that I have had neighbors in my neighborhood that once their child got to 5th grade, they immediately started looking for either a zoning request change, or am I going to sell my house and move to get into a school district for my middle school child? How are we going to get that one working? We tried with that meeting. I'll give you that. We all,
Yep.
it was pushed. I'm just not sure we even scratched the surface of them listening to us.
Right, and you're exactly right. South Daytona Elementary, could use some improvement, but what we're all alluding to is being zoned when you're in middle school. The middle school we're currently zoned for has been a consistently underperforming school. And I know the zoning aspects of it. I know that they take a little from this area, a little from this area, a little from this area. And I can tell you that I've heard the frustration from the parents. And to be totally honest, I'm one of them. Both my kids go to Warner Christian Academy because they investigated the middle school we were zoned for and did not want them to attend there. So we need to look at that zoning. There's other middle schools that are out there. I know the variance procedure is extremely difficult because I tried to go through it. And we need to look at the individuals actually attending that school, and maybe with this school and working with them, the zoning issue might go a long way to bringing up that school's underperformance. Maybe they can look at hitting other areas because I think a large number of our residents are not going to that school, are choosing other alternatives. And that does nothing
So
but...
how are you going to change, how are you going to start change in that?
Well, we have to open up a dialogue with the school board right away and hammer that point home. And that needs to be a primary focus because, like I was saying before, people moving in, they look at that school rating, and I believe that's hurting our neighborhoods. We're transitioning to an older population here, and some of the older population want to sell and go someplace else, but they cannot sell their house. We have young families that come in, oh, it's a nice house, nice neighborhood, nice small town, which we all want to live in, but the school we're zoned for, and let's make another choice. So I think together, working with the school board, staff aggressively working with the school board, we can resolve both issues, where both issues are resolved in a manner that benefits the both of us.
Okay. So, working for the city for the 30 plus years that I did, I'm going to touch base on one of the questions I felt was not answered. But when I was a patrolman, I had a group of friends. Then I became a sergeant, and that group got smaller. Then I became a captain, and that group got smaller. And then when I got to the big seat, as I like to call it, it was really limited.
Right.
So I'm gonna throw this question back on you because it was scratched over here.
Sure.
You have a group of friends that you had, or coworkers,
Sure.
that you could count on, and as the higher you go up that ladder, that group gets smaller. So it's kind of like we talked about yesterday. How are you going to get them, because they've seen you at your best and they've seen you at your worst.
Right.
How are you going to overcome this, and how are you going to get these employees to say, okay, we're gonna give Les a chance, we're gonna, because just like you got hugs last night, I got comments too.
Yep, absolutely.
And not all of it was,
Absolutely. And you're going to have that, at these meetings. All right. Staff issues. Since I've been made deputy city manager last year, I've consulted a lot with the staff, sometimes not voluntary. When an issue has has come up, in lieu of going to the manager for whatever reason, they came to me, asked for advice or opinions. Yes, I do have a large group of individuals right now that I work with, support me, but we all have a job to do as well, and I understand the need to, like I said, as you go up, the list of friends gets smaller, but I know the problems with staff. I know the problems they're having right now. And I know that I can resolve those issues. I know that I can bring harmony and a cohesiveness to the staff where we can work together and not, I'm working on this part of the project, I'm working on this part, I'm working on this part, and then when they put it together, it's a mess. We need to work on our cohesion. We need to work on our communication. We need to work on our enthusiasm. We need to, like I said, get back to working for these people behind us, listen to their input, improve our customer service, and I have no issues with you're either on board or you're not.
okay, so that leads me to a follow-up
Sure.
question. Without naming names,
Right.
without naming departments,
Sure.
do we need some staff changes?
Absolutely. Yes.
Are you the person to make those staff changes?
Absolutely. Anybody who takes a responsibility like this would be foolish not to use this opportunity to correct the issues that they see need to be corrected, to put them in the best position to succeed. And for me, now is that time.
Thank you, Mayor, for bringing it up, because I was going to go back to it, so you saved it, the effort. But I do want to ask you, Les, if you were to get offered this position and you accepted, when could you assume the role reasonably? How soon, and also describe how that would work?
Okay. As far as the time frame, I believe that as soon as the contract's signed, ratified, and I'm sworn, and I can start right away. Whenever you need me to start, I can do it. We need to go out for a public works director. We can do that advertisement. We can, which will be a 30-day advertisement. There's already some possible candidates out there that have reached out to me. We can whittle that list down, bring someone on board, but during the interim, I can do both jobs. We have a septic sewer project coming up. I've worked with that project since the beginning. We've had staff excellent help in getting the grants. We've talked to the residents. We've got a plumber on board. When the plumber found out that I was one of the finalists for this job, he calls me, "Oh no, who are we going to deal with?" And I said, "Just relax. If I get offered the position, it'll be me, to work you through this project until someone comes on board and we bring them up to speed." I think in taking the other city manager candidate around, I think there was really no better person than me to take him around yesterday, but I understand I couldn't. I could, any new public works director that starts, I can show them the ins and outs of everything and how it works. What works, what doesn't, and I can get him on his feet up and running very quickly.
So what I'm hearing is you feel comfortable tomorrow?
Absolutely. If that's the pleasure of the council.
So the last, I'm assuming there's no more questions, or is there more questions?
I think that finishes for me.
So
I think mine was going to be a baby. you know the energy, and it's delicate, it's public forum, all that stuff about the school. In Campbell, socioeconomics, as the crow flies, we're just as close to schools that are scoring A's as the score that scores a D, and it just that's a struggle. So I think, Mayor, you kind of pigeoned that down and stuff.
I can tell you that based on my involvement and the history that I have, I would gladly go with whoever's going to lead that charge. Or with some backup, I'll be glad to kick that can down the road.
And my point, we know that that's not strictly the city manager's ability to fix that, but you're sharing energy from this council that that's what we want to be a point of emphasis for you or whoever is going to be selected for this role. Because again, I'll speak candidly, as a councilman for 8 years, I've had one person from the school board ever come to a meeting, and that's when they wanted us to support them for a sales tax increase. So don't come asking for money, and don't come and help us with our challenges. So, and we can fix pipes, we can do redevelopment, we can do code enforcement, we can get staffing fixed or adjusted or tweaked. We cannot affect, and I agree with you, I think you nailed the answer to the question in regards to that is what people look for. In my line of work, I'm bringing people from all over the country to work at Embry-Riddle, and the first thing they ask is, how's your schools? How's your schools? It breaks my heart to be the vice president of HR, and I struggle to tell that if I were to want them to move into South Daytona, I got to show them the scores of those schools. So I'll get off my soapbox, but that's a lot of energy there.
And absolutely, and I'm directly involved with it. Like I said, I have 2 kids that go to school that I had to withdraw them from the public school system.
But another personal testimony, our daughter would not live in South Daytona because of the school system.
Yeah.
We had to get a variance, so, and that was difficult.
I think a number of us are having those issues. So I hear you.
Take the last couple minutes.
Yeah.
I'll let you close.
Okay,
I'll let you
perfect.
ask us some questions. You have questions of us?
I don't have questions. Obviously, I know each and every one of you. You know me. You know my work ethic. We've worked together in one capacity or another to improve this city for a lot of years. I know several years ago this city was on a downward slide, and we worked really hard, and we brought it back up to where we have a good appearance on this city now, and we want to continue to maintain that. You have the same passion for this city that I do. Collectively, we've spent a lot of time improving the city over the years. We've done that with citizen input, and I think that's going to be valuable. Many of you have worked for the city as employees and have risen through the ranks for the betterment of this city, to serve a higher purpose. And I ask you to allow me that same opportunity, and I won't let you down.
Scott?
Thank you.
Anything legal?
No, I don't really have any legal questions.
Thank you, Les.
Thank you for this
Appreciate your time.
opportunity. Thank you.
Let's take a recess. Okay, it's now 10 o'clock. Debbie, I'm going to ask for roll call again, please. And I'm going to ask everyone to speak into their microphones a little better. I was told that people in the back can't hear us. However, we can hear them quite well. So, Debbie, if you would give us a roll call, please.
Councilman Young?
Here.
Councilman Cordier?
Here.
Vice Mayor O'Neill? Here. Councilman Shoner?
Here.
Mayor Hall?
Here.
City Attorney Simpson?
Here. And for the record, Scott, you were here, what, about 9:05?
I got him.
I wasn't asking for an excuse. I was merely noting that, I realize, I would never assume that an attorney would.
First time you've ever gone over the railroad tracks, Scott?
Yeah.
And then the parking lot's full here.
Uh-huh.
It was full.
Of
Yeah,
course.
Drive all the way around and drive all the way over there.
You don't want to park in that parking lot anyway.
Well, are you there? Are you gonna back out?
Wow. And he gives us guidance.
So, now that we've got that out of the way,
The important stuff.
Mr. Lanham, the podium is yours, sir. If you'd like to introduce yourself, I know we've all met and had the opportunity to speak with you, but if you want to take a couple minutes and
Well, I'm Bill Lanham from Fayetteville, West Virginia. I
just
didn't
need you
get
to turn the volume up just a little.
turn. Oh,
There
on
you
the-
go.
There, on the, okay. Bill Lanham from Fayetteville, West Virginia, and didn't get an opportunity to meet the Honorable Mr. Simpson.
I wasn't invited.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, the meet and greet was open to the public last night, so, and they had a wonderful turnout. You have a wonderful residents and citizens of the South Daytona. I was very pleased, and the reception I received was very nice. And one of the things I must say is my visit here, although I've had a little bit of stomach issues, has been very, very pleasant, very appreciative of your hospitality and your kindness, and I appreciate that greatly. And I appreciate the opportunity to be considered for your next city manager, if you so deem me to have that privilege and honor. So if there's any questions.
Oh, we're going to have some questions.
Okay.
We'll follow the same pattern as we did before. We'll start off with the Vice Mayor, and she'll lead us off.
Sure. Yesterday, we kind of touched a little bit on, you said you communicate with your council via text message, group text. Could you expand on that?
Well, that was one of the things that if I got some information and somebody had included that information to me, then I would want to share that
Okay.
with everyone. I feel that if there is something that would be important for you all to know that's occurring before someone shows up at your front door, whether it's a reporter or whether it's with the newspaper or TV, I think it's important that you should know. And I would, want to get that information out to you as soon as possible. And the same is when we had the derecho, where we were without power and water, and I wanted to make sure that the council members and the mayor and the recorder all had the same information at the same time after I had the information from the command center. And that way they can get that information out to the residents in their neighborhood, because we're going to be the first point of contact. They're going to come to you and say, what's going on? Where are we going to have these resources? When are we going to get our power back on? And those are things that in a situation, your normal routine day-to-day life has now been impacted by a natural event. And the one thing we want to do is, as our government and elected officials, is we want to make sure that we're calm, that we come across calm, that we can make sure that their life will be back. We will get it back, and we will try to give them as accurate to the minute detail on time. Now, we can't say that the power in that neighborhood will be on as fast as the power in the block over from you, but if it's coming on and I'm informed that this section on the grid will be coming up, then I want to make sure that the council knows, because there's going to be people from different neighborhoods that contact them. And I just think good information and accurate information is very important, and to disseminate it out to everyone. That way, you're getting the same information that I'm getting.
Now, does that become public record, your text messages? I mean, is that,
That, I think Florida is a little different than West Virginia, but I understand, you know, I can make a phone call, but I think if the speed and accuracy of our information today, it's so quick to, you know, just include a group text. And I guess you know, if somebody wanted to FOIA that, then they could. That would probably be in the purview of the town attorney, you know, as counsel there. But to me, I think disseminating information, especially during an emergency situation like that, is paramount. I mean, to me, you want to calm your citizens. You want to reassure your citizens that law and order will be followed, and that we are responding, and that, you know, if services, essential services, they're up and running. We're working, and we're here to help you. And, you know, especially when, you know, the derecho hit in our community, it was in July, 8 days of the hottest time of the year. And you're talking about people, elderly people, people without oxygen, where to get that those supplies, where to get water and ice. I mean, that was, to me, that was the most important essential item to get out, and then to make sure that the council members knew where, you know, we could get them, where we were distributing them with our city employees, our police department, and our fire department.
okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Schoner?
Mr. Lanford, could you outline for the audience and the rest of the council, so we all have the same understanding, organization that you had underneath you in Fayetteville, and the departments that you're responsible for, just a brief description of
Yes, sir.
everything you're responsible for right now.
Yes, sir. Well, a small community of roughly less than 3,000 people. I wear multiple hats. I cover not only the Public Works and Street Department, I also cover the Recycling Department. I cover the Stormwater Department. I serve as the floodplain manager, the stormwater inspector, the nuisance code enforcement inspector. I manage and oversee the cemetery, the Parks and Recreation Department. I'm the recycling coordinator. Manage the city. I work well with the fire and police departments, and serve on numerous committees, not only for the West Virginia Municipal League, but serve as the Fayette County Solid Waste Authority member. I serve as the chairman of the New River Transit Authority. I serve as the co-chair of the Fayette Raleigh-Fayette MPO, Metropolitan Planning Organization. Serve as the president of the West Virginia City Managers Association, and I'm a member of the West Virginia Municipal Water Quality Association, West Virginia Rural Water Association, and I might have missed one or two, but I wear numerous hats. A lot of times, my wife says I wear a lot of hats. But, you know, the one thing I believe is we help our neighboring cities and our neighboring communities, and if there's information I can share, I'm more than willing to share, be a reference for other communities in West Virginia. My door and my phone are always open.
I found it kind of unique that the police department's underneath the mayor.
It is.
I don't see a problem.
Ignore that, but
It's when the town was established, the superintendent had purview over basically all the employees, with the exception of the police department and the fire department is volunteer. But I believe in a good working relationship with the mayor and council. The mayor, Jim Akers, and Dennis Hansen, for that fact. Both mayors are basically following the same guidelines as your charter, with the exception of the police department. But I have worked with 4 different police chiefs since my tenure there in Fayetteville. We work very closely together. I believe working close with the different departments helps make us non-competitive at the end of the day when we're preparing the budget with council, is that we're all going in, we're all in the same family, we're all in the same organization, we all row the same way. So if there are some needs here, we need to address these needs, and then next time we can address the needs here, because we're used to working with limited funds. And to follow up, I don't think I mentioned that I am the grant writer for the town of Fayetteville. You know, the various steps that you know, the public information officer, press releases, getting working on meeting with the local, state, and federal officials. That I'm the face of Fayetteville out front, and I remember that every day, is that I represent the town of Fayetteville, and when you look at me, you're looking at the town of Fayetteville, so I want to make sure I uphold those standards highly.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Councilman Cordia?
Okay. What specific experience have you had involving the growth in communities that you've served?
With the City of Dunbar, I was the Public Works Director, and my main work there was revamping the Public Works Department and working with civic organizations to improve the quality and the appearance of the City of Dunbar, and strengthen the Public Works Department, and I was also street commissioner. So one of the other purviews we did was paving improvements in the city, park improvements. I worked closely with the Parks and Rec director to restore Laurel Anderson Lake. We did some major cleanup work up there with our crews. On with the city of, our town of Fayetteville, one of the first tasks that the mayor and council had requested that I work on was securing and making sure that we got the Fayette Town Center project in. That was a big box store with Walmart and Lowe's, and 13 inner stores, along with a Bob Evans, a Wendy's, an Arby's, and a McDonald's. And the paramount situation there was, the most pressing thing was when I arrived in Fayetteville, and I was learning the lay of the land and learning the resources of the municipal water system that they had. They didn't have the capacity issue to adequately supply the retail development complex and the citizens of the town of Fayetteville. So we needed to make sure that we could provide them the fire suppression water supply that they needed. We needed to make sure that they'd have the water supply for continued growth on other parcels. But at the same, in the same note, the previous superintendent hadn't completed a equalization tank for the sewage treatment center. And in that, you know, one of the other things you have to have, if you can supply somebody water, is fantastic. But the other part is you have to have the capacity on your sewage treatment end to be able to treat the water that's being used at your other complexes and throughout the town. And that's where we were in a situation where it would have been harmful to the citizenry in rates to have to try and do improvements and build the infrastructure to supply enough water for that retail complex without losing that retail complex. We didn't have enough, there was not enough time. But for us, we were surrounded by West Virginia American Water, who had the resources, had the plan, had the capacity to take that on. So one of the things we worked on was putting together a sale of our water and sewer system and our sewage treatment system. And fortunately for us, our bonds were about to renew. So that made us a very inviting acquisition for West Virginia American Water. I believe at the time we were the first municipal water system the first sewage system West Virginia American Water took over. They had taken over a PSD, I believe, in Cabell County in West Virginia, but they hadn't actually taken over a municipal sewage system. So it was new territory for them and new territory for us. But one of the things that we did was ensure that when we were able to receive some payment back from them, I recommended to the mayor and council that we invest in a $110,000 street sweeper, an Elgin Crosswind street sweeper, to be able to provide, residential cleaning of our city streets and storm drains in those areas. I also worked with the mayor and council, and we discussed a rate relief with the other proceeds that we received from the sale. And what we did is the rates for West Virginia American Water were here. The municipal rates for our town citizens were down here. So what we wanted to do is make sure that we didn't jump those rates so that they would feel it right away. We gave them a little rate relief so they'd gradually tier into that system. And that's how we thought the town would be best served with the proceeds. Going in that direction. And I have maintained a close relationship, as I do with I believe in all the utilities. It's important for us as city managers to have a close relationship with the providers in our city. I can pick up the phone and call the gentleman that's over the water system with West Virginia American Water out of Oak Hill when there's a problem, when there's a leak identified in a neighborhood. So the citizens still have the ability to contact Town Hall, but they have to then go through the West Virginia American Water System's 1-800 service to get that work order processed. But if I know there's a leak and I can inform him of that leak also and try to speed up the time that the response is handled. And I do that with other state agencies, West Virginia Department of Highways, our district manager, the regional supervisor of District 9. I think building partnerships and relationships with individuals throughout the state, that when there's a problem that arises, i.e. we had the developer with 1,100 homes on Bridgeview Estates in the Ledges, and he'd called me this summer, and one of the issues he had was some of the home sites. They were having problems with the satellite TVs, and he said, man, we're having problems, selling some of the homes in this area because they're secondary homes, but they're also possibly primary homes for some individuals. And they were wanting cable service. And one of the things that we had done when that development had came before us in planning and zoning, and we and the council and the mayor, we had put in place and recommended a $1 million bond for infrastructure. We wanted to make sure that here they are, they're saying they're going to build 1,100 homes. But, our concern was they'd sell lots, but they wouldn't put roads in. It was a gated community, and they might not put the utilities and services in. So with the $1 million bond up front that we required of them, that said, okay, you're putting it here, we're going to have it in the bank so that if you fail to follow through on what your obligation is and what you're telling us, that these people will have water, they'll have sewer, they'll have roads, and they'll have electric. They put in all those lines. Well, I reminded him that when you put in those lines, you put in 2 extra conduit runs. And I said, I'll be more than happy to contact the West Virginia Municipal League, and I'll contact somebody with Southern Link and find out how come their engineering department hasn't gotten back to you. And he had called me thereafter, and he said, man, I appreciate that. I had been trying and trying for months and months and months and could never get any movement, and you got movement in one day. And I said, that's what I'm here for. If there's a problem and there's a way we can assist you and help you succeed, we want you to succeed, because that helps the city succeed and the town to succeed. You know, I work closely with the West Virginia Municipal League. I believe, you know, if we work with our mutual cities, we're stronger in numbers. We're very strong in numbers. I hope, did I answer everything for you there? Thank you.
Councilman Young?
So I was asked 2 questions, but you kind of already started down the path of answering my first question, which was basically along the lines of speaking to the partnerships that you have and experience that you have, and you kind of spoke to those with your state agencies and those kinds of things. You, you know, you're familiar with our area, though you're in West Virginia, you vacationed here, and you shared with that personally, and knowing the family here in Ormond and things. So let me take that question a little bit different. In the Halifax area here, as I shared with you on a one-on-one, you can go from one city to the next, and if you were a visitor, you would not know. There's no gaps on US 1 from Ormond to Hollywood to Daytona, Port Orange, or South Daytona, Port Orange. We all have to kind of live off of each other and benefit from each other, and sometimes we suffer from each other. And so I'd like to, one part of the question is, talk a little bit about some of those experiences you might have, not ever visiting Fayetteville, West Virginia, so don't know if you are standing out there a little bit more. I mean, we shared yesterday how you've turned from a rural to a urban area and do those kinds of things. So a little bit about that, and then speak to the development that you've had. So you talked about those restaurants, you talked about the Walmart, the Lowe's, those kinds of things. Where did you, as the city administrator, play a role in that growth? We want some growth here. Now, we might debate on what that growth looks like, but that's something. Did it happen by accident? The big box stores just came in, bought some land, or did you actively engage a partner there? And so expand a little bit of how those kinds of things happen.
Okay. Well, I'll answer the first part.
Yeah.
With Fayetteville, you have a unique character, and you have a quaint, historic downtown area that has a certain character that when you stop and take a few moments and you walk in the downtown area, you have that quaint country, and all of a sudden you have this historic red brick courthouse. You have the nice architecture of the old stores, but then at the same time, you have the entrepreneurs that took an old church and turned it into a cafe. And you have quaint dining opportunities. I mean, around us is a national park, and you know, those kind of characteristics, you just don't want to pop in there and just have just any kind of boom gas station that you've ever seen before. One of the things that we had our gateway into our town. On one corner you have a Tudor's, which is a franchise chain throughout West Virginia and in a couple other states. But on that corner, we wanted something a little bit sharper that popped. And one of the things that we impressed upon them, they were looking to build a newer station in town. So when they had talked to us and approached us on that, we had some things that we had visioned. And when I say we collectively as council, because you represent the people in your community. So what direction and what vision that you have is a vision that I want to embrace And I have embraced those ideas and visions that have been brought forth to me and then try to facilitate making them come to reality. And it's just the same character was one of the worries with the downtown businesses was that the retail shopping complex would take that away from the downtown. But there's a different kind of competition between the downtown and the retail shopping. The retail shopping will catch the people that are the snowbirds, we call them, that are coming from Florida. The Canadians, the people from Quebec, Montreal, those areas, New York. They'll stop out there at the town center, they'll get gas, but they won't necessarily stop downtown. But they'll stop out at that area. Now, if we market it and we put more information out there about what offerings are downtown, they come and explore. We make it inviting. The box that the store, you see a lot of clear cut, we didn't want that along 19. We didn't want everything you see everywhere else. We wanted a tree line pull off. When you're at that intersection of 19, you don't have a huge grouping of signs that you see, you know, one after the other after the other. You don't have that. We wanted one sign. We wanted, and that was the thing with Walmart is, you know, hey, that was a push. And it's been a push, but it's been a push to say, you know, we got a little uniqueness to Fayetteville. Your Walmart in Fayetteville is a little different than the Walmarts that are in Beckley, that are in Summersville and other areas. And they wanted that uniqueness. But the answer to the other question is that when I arrived there, the other superintendent had left. The mayor was filling in, and the mayor needed a superintendent, and he recruited me. And his council wanted me. And one of the things was they didn't want to lose the retail shopping complex. The county administration was trying to get it in the county. The city of Oak Hill was losing it because of issues they had over there with Walmart corporate. And I'm not privy to that. I don't know all the ins and outs of that because I was not there. My main task was to make sure that we didn't lose that opportunity and that we garnered that business, and then after that we continued to garner more. As people would come in to my office and talk to me, I would try to encourage and recruit them to come back, go before our planning and zoning, come before our town council. I've had people want to put billboards up, these large billboards. And, not too keen on large billboards, but, that's something that, we put up before the entire council. It's just something that, I firmly believe we're living in our community, and if it's something that the governing body wants to amend and do, we have a moratorium on those signboards. But that doesn't mean I wouldn't allow some individual not to be able to say, hey, we'd like to have. Can I not have an opportunity? Yes, sir, you can appear before council. You can pitch to council, and they've come back and pitched to council on digital billboards and even offered, to market the town for sets dollars. But there again, it's, you are the elected officials if that's what you want, and it's, the kind of character you want to maintain. What do you want to say, like you said? Do you want to be like every other community, or do you want your community to stand out? Do you want people to drive an hour to go into South Daytona and have dinner, have lunch? And that's what we've got now is people drive an hour from Charleston and other areas of the state just to come up and have dinner or maybe have lunch. Look at the new River Gorge Bridge. So It's the kind of message you want to send out, and it's the thing that I try to instill is I want to, when I'm pitching Fayetteville, I want to leave you with, I'd like to look up that community. I might want to go to that community. He's talked so much about Pies and Pints and Secret Sandwich Society. I might want to try a sandwich there or a pizza there. But I mean, that's the job that I think that I have tried to do. Also, as you know, as being city managers, put the best foot forward. And as I say, we had the EPA director from Region 3. He was speaking in Charleston before the West Virginia Municipal Water Quality Association. And when I found out he was going to Minden, West Virginia, which is a community in Oak Hill, I said, well, make sure you stop in Fayetteville and have dinner at one of our fine restaurants. And he said, my staff's already informed me of the quality of restaurants between Pies and Pints and Cathedral Cafe and Secret Sandwich Society. So I hope I answered you.
You good? All right, so I'm gonna finish off first round here. So what would be your first steps upon assuming responsibility as city manager? Where would you want to see yourself in the first year?
Well, the first step, I would have to get very familiar with the staff, as I did with the city of Dunbar and the town of Fayetteville. Get familiar with the staff, get familiar with the departments, understand the strengths and weaknesses of those areas, and then I would want to get with each of the areas. With the town of Fayetteville, we didn't have a TIF district. That legislation just got approved last year. That's an extra tool in the toolbox that you know, I wasn't privy to, but I know that you all have here. You have a restoration community restoration redevelopment. That's right. That's right. In West Virginia, we have CURA. It's, you know, CURA is an authority there, is a re-urbanization authority, but we didn't have that in Fayetteville. So you have a lot more tools here, and that's one of the things that I was looking at, is that there's a lot of areas that I'd like to see what the goals and objectives are for those different groups, and then get with the council and see, are we all on the same page? So we're rowing in the same direction, and we're after the same goals and objectives. That would be my first order of business. And then my second order of business along those same lines would be to look into each department and see what I see can be improved upon, whether it's facility improvements or personnel improvements. I think you know, doing a thorough inventory and understanding of, boom, this is I've had 2 public works departments that I've had to actually rebuild, and I think I discussed that maybe with everyone, I hope. When I was in Dunbar, the building that housed the public works department was inadequate, it was held up by rented scaffolding that they'd been paying for years. And one of my objectives in both working in both cities was safety for the employees that work there day to day, and safety for the citizens that come to those public facilities, and the appearance of those public facilities. Because, again, we represent the city, so we need to make sure that the city facilities are well-maintained, are very pleasing in appearance, so that the citizenry can have pride in those areas. And one of the things in the city of Dunbar that I instilled in there that is still followed through today, I think they still use the same decal. The city there had lost its high school, and they were the Dunbar Bulldogs. So one of the things that I had developed was just a logo that we put on our trucks, that because they just had a plain black and white logos, street department, city of Dunbar. Well, I had developed a bulldog and put community pride, and I put that logo on all our trucks. We rotated, but I didn't put it on the old trucks, the unsafe trucks, the trucks that I recommended that we get rid of. It went on all the new trucks, the new equipment, and I pushed that pride, community pride. And then our street department guys worked with beautification, worked with the civic groups in Dunbar. And then when I went to Fayetteville, we did the same thing. I took the plain branding that we had on the trucks and put, town of Fayetteville, put the new River Gorge Bridge, largest steel arch bridge in the Western Hemisphere, and put one of the coolest small towns in America on our trucks. And, a majority of all our trucks have that on there, but then when they see that in their neighborhood and they see that vehicle, or if you're just stopping for a tank of gas and you see some guys working in an area, those guys work for the town of Fayetteville. One, because they have bright uniforms that have reflectivity in those uniforms, and they're highly visible, but also on their truck it says one of America's coolest small towns. So if you didn't see that on the sign when you entered into the town of Fayetteville, or you didn't see it on the Route 19, and that took a piece of legislation I worked with our state senators and our state delegates to get that passed, to get that on Route 19, is that one of the coolest small towns. I wanted you to stop. I wanted you to think, what makes Fayetteville such a cool small town? Because if I can get you to stop, you're going to stay for a little bit. You're going to
So
spend
on a follow-up question, tell me how long it would take you to hit the ground running here?
Probably January, and if I get an opportunity, we could talk a little bit in negotiations, I guess, on a date. But I'd really like to entertain that move. that wouldn't bother me at all.
Vice Mayor?
Scott, do you have anything?
Why don't you let's go?
Yeah, we'll
Okay.
round two. Take a breath. We're going to do round two now.
Okay, how do you propose increasing our reserves?
Well, there again, I would have to thoroughly go through your budget, and we would. I'd have to have a thorough combing of the budget. I mean, that would be the first thing. Is that I want to work with real numbers. I'm not sure each month if you all have a financial statement that you approve each month on expenditures each month. Is that something that you all do each month?
No.
No.
Because one of the things I'd want to do is I would want to see a thorough review of each fund, how much money's in that fund, how much money is anticipated to come into that fund, and then the expenditures that you'd have. I need to see a thorough review of the expenditures, because that's what I do each month, and require each month and I work very closely with our town treasurer, very closely. And I want to know accurately, what we're expected, anticipated to receive. And then when we sit down to prepare a budget, I want to have real numbers that I can provide to you all so that we can make real choices, real expenditures, and be very cautious on how we proceed, because you have to have real numbers. I mean, it's one thing to sit there and say, I want 20 police officers, but how are we going to be able to fund those 20 police officers? Or if we want, 5 people more in the street department, I want to make sure that we're going to have the revenues coming in. We're going to be able to meet payroll. We're going to be able to meet overtime. Those are clear objectives. And then the other thing is having money for capital projects. If there's one example I think I used with a couple of you that if the town of Fayetteville had asked me to try to go after recreational trail money. So I worked with our extension agents. We submitted a federal flap grant in the amount of $214,000. One of the part of the negotiations, that money had to go through our West Virginia Department of Transportation. One of the hang-ups with that grant was the fact that we had in there a listing for a small excavator. Well, one of the reasons why that was submitted with the grant is because I only have one small excavator. And I have a cemetery to maintain, I have streets and sidewalks to maintain, do work on. So the caveat with that was to get the grant pushed forward to the next stage for funding, I had to get the town council to give me the money and appropriate the money for a small excavator. In order to get $214,000, we had to commit $50,000 to cover that. But I mention that because when you're looking at the budget, you had to carry that for 2 years. We had to carry that, and I had to remind them that that $50,000 can't go anywhere else, can't be moved to purchase, if the police chief came in and said, I want 3 cars. Well, we'll just move that money over to cover that. No, we have to hold that money because you've got me committed to going after additional money for additional projects. And that's what I would say here, is that we have to look and work together. We rotate our fleet. That was one of the things that I was proud of doing at the city of Dunbar and proud to do at the town of Fayetteville, is fleet rotation. The appearance and having safe equipment is paramount. The fire department, with the equipment they have, needs to be updated, but we have a fire levy in place. We do a rotation with the trucks. That's how we get our trucks. We wanted to get an aerial ladder truck. The way we got an aerial ladder truck, we bought a used aerial ladder truck from the city of Montgomery. Therein lies with the levy, fire levy, the fire chief was able to leverage some funds through the grant process because he had an aerial ladder truck. He could replace that old ladder truck that we purchased from the city of Montgomery for a brand new one, which is going to be coming sometime in 2019. But it's that kind of things I would have to look at so that we can make informed decisions before we did our lease purchases and on our fleets to make sure we're doing a good rotation of our fleets and equipment. But I'd have to know where the money is. I just don't add people just to add people and then say, well, no, we can't support those people, then we have to lay those people off. That's the last thing I want to do. I want to provide quality service in the communities I represent. And we've done quite well with part-time individuals in certain areas. But I would have to have a thorough review of your financial statements and your reports. And then one of the things might consider is being able to do that each month and have council review and look at where we are each month. So that way you know where we're at. And then we get ahead of the curve. I mean, I like staying ahead of the curve instead of all of a sudden be behind. I'd like to, here's where we're at. And then with our street department, parks and recreation departments. I keep a very keen eye with those departments, and then work closely with our treasurer and our police chief for the police department, so that way, you know, the objectives and goals that he sets, he can meet. And then if there's some grant opportunities, I've helped his officers with that, and encouraged grant training for his officers, and recommended that council support that.
Councilman Shum?
Have you had, well, first of all, do you deal with unions? Are any of your organizations union?
No. When I arrived at the city of Dunbar, they did have a union for the street department. But it wasn't soon after the new mayor came in and asked me to stay, and then that the council dissolved recognition of that union and that contract. But that was not, you know, that was, you know, the council's decision.
Thank you. Councilman Cordier?
How many employees have you managed and supervised in Fayetteville?
In Fayetteville, I would say close to 22 maybe. We have 30 together total, with 12 police officers. We have a very professional police officer force. There's not anything I couldn't ask any of the officers that if we need it done, they step in, and we work together as a team. We're all a team. And it's just like you know, the fire department. If I need a training session, I'm big on safety training for the street department, public works department, recycling departments, parks department. If I need to use the training facility at the fire station, it's just a phone call, and we have access to that. So I think I have a good working relationship. When I was at the city of Dunbar, I had over 36. I had street and sanitation there and different crews.
City manager, what has been your most frustrating aspect of your job? Whether it's people, situations, what's...
Frustrating. I think the slow funding process from the federal government down to the state. When you're waiting on grant funding
Florida's the same. So.
from DC that you've submitted, you've worked up, and it seems like it just takes forever. And to have somebody tell you, well, now we've streamlined this system, and I'm like, the forms get longer, they get computerized, but I haven't seen it streamlined. To me, if you're going to streamline something, that means you're going to streamline the time from submittal to the time you write the check and send it back to the city.
So that's low-hanging fruit. Honest answer, but low-hanging fruit. So let me press you a little bit harder. What's the most frustrating part of the things that probably are more within your control? What do you sit down and lose sleep and go, man, I wish I could handle this differently, or man, I wish I could get this ball rolling, or I wish I could get my city attorney to counsel at time, or something.
Yeah.
Low-hanging fruit, Scott, I'm sorry.
I have to say, I've got an outstanding relationship with our town attorney. Outstanding relationship. I build relationships, but I would have to say, in all honesty, I mean, I work well, and one of the biggest things I have a problem with is when people say we can't do it that way. Why not? Let's find out why. And then, as you see, I get appointed and asked to serve in a lot of capacities in a lot of areas. as a problem solver. I mean, that's to me what a city manager is all about. We're in it to solve people's problems, everyday problems. They come to our doors. Yeah, you might have an issue that somebody, wants to yell and scream. I've been yelled and screamed at before. Just don't take it personal. Don't take it home. You just have to know that that's the job you're in, and try to resolve that and work through that. And I just feel that when you get into public administration, or if you get into government service, you got to have a thick skin and be know that you're doing the right thing and make the right decision and the best decision in your mind for the citizens of the town. And that's what I try to do, and I try to uphold at all times. Is that even when chaos and people may be saying harsh things, and they're mad because I came by and cited them for something, and I'm the worst guy in the world. You're not doing everything else. That's something that I'm very close to the citizenry because I do so many jobs, and I'm out on the street all the time. So I'm going to hear it all. But at the same time, I don't sit there and go, "Oh, gee whiz, this is just terrible." But I mean, it's like I say, you're in public administration, you serve the public, and you do a good job at it if you're a good public administrator. I've sat in meetings with younger administrators, and I say, "Guys, you got in the wrong business. You got to look at when a person comes to your door, that problem is an opportunity. It's an opportunity for you to try to help that person. Yeah, they might have had that problem for years, but the thing is you got to give me some time to understand how this problem started, how it came about, and then we'll work on the solution if we can." But one thing that I would tell you is that we got to work together. That's the thing. We can always have an exchange of different opinions, and I believe in a clear review of understanding between both sides. Just hear me out, hear you out. And one of the things, being on the West Virginia Municipal League Board of Directors, that our league president and we have embraced, and I've actually prepared a sample resolution that was sent out from the league that we moved to have civility in our municipality when dealing with the public and each other. And I think that's a common thread that we can have differences of views, of opinion, but we can be civil with each other. We can discuss them. We can debate them. We can talk about it. But we need to be civil with one another. And I think that's, lacks today a lot. Let's just be respectful. I can understand where you're coming from, but understand where I'm coming from. And if I have to disagree with you, that's okay. We just don't have to be enemies about it. We don't have to be spiteful about it. We can still go out and have a sandwich together, or we can stand together and light a Christmas tree, To me, that's what it's all about. I hope I answered your question.
I'm going to bypass my second question and let the attorney.
Just going to kind of compare some laws we have to see if you're subject to the same laws up there in West Virginia. We have something called a sunshine law here, which basically prohibits the council and the appointed boards from talking to each other outside public meetings on any issue that could foreseeably come before them. Did you have a similar type law?
We have a open meetings law that if they're not supposed to discuss. I guess it might be. I would say you're probably right. I would say it's similar because they can't sit there and send emails back and forth and vote on it to get that way. So you're absolutely
they can't. Well, here they can't even talk about an issue that could, even if it comes about to them on the agenda for a vote. This is where they have to talk about it.
Very good.
They can't talk about it outside the meeting, and they can't. the mayor can't call you and you say, well, this is what Ralph thinks.
Right.
Well, that's conduit, can't do that.
Right.
And do you have a public records type law where the records that of the city have to be retained a certain way, are open to the public for inspection, things like that?
We do have an ordinance to that effect, and then we do have a cost per printing and an administrative cost for access to that if you come in and you FOIA, Freedom of Information Act.
So that's under the federal law. We have a similar to that, it's just state law.
Okay.
In Florida, we have, counties are two types of counties in Florida, charter, non-charter county, and a charter county, which Volusia County is, has significantly more power, very similar to a municipality in terms of their charter. And we have to work with them a lot in terms of a lot of funding comes through the county to us. We sometimes have to get authorization. You mentioned the CRA, because of a charter county, the law says all CRA authority is with the county, and they have to delegate it to us. So we've had to go to them and get delegations, and they have the ability to adopt regulations that are effective, enforceable in our community. They enforce them, but they apply in our community. What kind of relationship is there between the county and Fayetteville up there? Did you have that similar type of working relationship, or did they not have as much control over what you did?
They don't have as much control, except with the annexation process. They have control over that. And I believe when you're referring to maybe the charter, I think you all have something, you all have home rule. And I think we've had that for the cities for over 50 years. Well, we haven't had it that long. We've had a pilot program that they're trying, the league and other cities are trying to get adopted as a formal, it's a program. It's not going to sunset, because it's due to sunset July 19th.
So in Fayetteville, the authority for the town to act, is that through a state legislative delegation of authority? That's how it used to be here in Florida before.
We can't, if we wanted to, say, establish a sales tax, we couldn't do that, because we're not a home rule city.
We can't do it either.
Yeah.
But unless the state authorizes us to,
Right,
we have to
yeah.
do it anyway. But you mentioned that you have a planning and zoning department. We also have one level here. It's called a comprehensive plan. It's actually required by state law, and it's more of a general guide to growth and development in a community. We have to adopt it and update it, and it'll have something called like a future land use map, which would generically say residential in this area.
Right.
And then you would adopt your land development regulations, which include your zoning, to implement, what type of residential is it, single family, multifamily, and it has other, concurrency issues, water, sewer, addresses school. Did you have both type of planning documents in Fayetteville?
We do. We have a comprehensive plan, and at the same time, we've been working with the West Virginia University Law School and on updating our zoning ordinances for the town of Fayetteville and updating those ordinances.
Okay. And just one last question, trying to understand the organizational chart. I was listening to you talk. I understand the police department's under the authority of the mayor.
Yes.
And I've heard you refer to a town treasurer and a fire chief, but do all other employees answer to you other than the police department?
I cover all those other employees with the limitation to the fire department and the police department.
And the fire department answers to who?
The fire department answers to the town council.
Or so the police department to the mayor, fire department to the town council?
Yeah,
I heard you mention something about the fire assessment and...
They're a volunteer fire department, okay. And the assessment I was referring to was the fire levy. Fayette County has a levy, a countywide levy.
Okay. All right, that's all my questions.
So we're going to take these next couple minutes and let you want to ask us questions and/or have your closing comments, if you will.
I would like to say I have enjoyed my time down here. I would like to see maybe some of your individual, as a group, just what you would like to see the direction of, if I could, of the city of South Daytona, maybe start down on this end and work our way across, and where you'd like to see your community be in the next 10 years, if I could.
Sure, quickly, I think, it's cliche, but to keep the small town charm, but have development. I raising my family here, I want opportunities, I want jobs, I want quality of life. I hear all the time, whether it's South Daytona or where through the whole Halifax area, people talk about, well, this, we can't have too much growth because this is the town I came to retire to. Well, as a resident, a lifelong, I kind of fight against that thing. We've got to have growth, we've got to have job opportunities, we've got to have economic impact. That being said, don't want a concrete jungle, but to find that right balance, and that's what I see. And I think the growth that we've seen in our sister cities to the north and south of us, we can supplement that, we can feed that, we can be fed by that, and we need to be an integral part of that.
I feel the same way that Brandon does about the city. I've been here almost my whole life. I'd like to see the US 1 redeveloped out here. Yeah, I'd like to see the infrastructure brought up to date. The school system that we talked about, maybe get with the county, get with them, bring that back up. See what we can do about the morale, the employees of the city, the entire city, and get the staff to work a little closer with the city manager.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. I think we're all on the same page.
We
Yeah.
appear to be pretty close.
We do.
Go ahead.
No, I think 100% we're all on board with those issues. On top of that, over the years, tack on to what Doug said, we're behind on our maintenance on all of our infrastructure, our buildings, our parks. Our parks are in pretty good shape, but our streets, our sewer system, everything needs to be brought up to date. It's the economic downturn has really hurt us. We need to get back current on that.
Anything else, sir?
Okay. Well, very good. Thank you. Well, I appreciate that. Those are attainable goals, I think. Very attainable, because that's one of the things I think when I've met with each of you is that I have done well at the two municipalities that I have served. And I just appreciate your all's hospitality and your kindness and your consideration.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're going to take 15 minutes.
Nice meeting you.
called back to order. Debbie, a roll call, please.
Councilman Young,
Still here.
Councilman Gordier,
Here.
Vice Mayor O'Neill,
Here.
Councilman Shoner,
Here.
Mayor Hall,
Here.
City Attorney Simpson.
Here. Mr. Parker, if you would join us, please.
Mayor and members of the council, for the record, my name is Ken Parker. I am a Florida City County Management Association, an International City and County Management Association Senior Advisor. I've had the privilege of working with each of you since the spring of 2018. It doesn't seem like it's been that long, but we started this process back in March, and we're here today. There's some items I'd like to cover with you before you begin the deliberation and kind of ranking of candidates. First, I know the Deputy City Clerk has already reminded you any notes that you have made today. Those are public records, and be sure that she receives those before you leave today. Secondly, I've placed two documents on the dais for your review. One of them I know that you're probably familiar with both of them, but I think that it's good for us to review both of these documents prior to you beginning the process. The first one is your city charter, and let me call your attention to section 7.02, and it relates to the appointment of a city manager. You're familiar with the voting requirements that 4/5 of the city council must be in agreement in order to appoint a city manager. Your charter also provides some instructions to the council related to the qualifications of the city manager. It states, and he shall, and again, that is maybe at some point those things get changed, but he means inclusive. He shall be chosen by the council solely on the basis of his executive and administrative qualifications, with special reference to his actual experience in and his knowledge of acceptable practice in respect to the duties of his office. So that was provided in your charter as part of the requirements that you have to take into consideration when you make an appointment and a finding. The second document relates to the job announcement. This information was provided in our discussions throughout the summer months, and when we prepared the job announcement, the ideal candidate qualifications were items that each of you provided, and we brought this back to the City Council for your adoption as before these were included in the job announcement and were advertised. So that is what this document is, and I thought it would be wise for you to have that in front of you as you begin your deliberation. Those are the two documents that I think that really are pertinent to this phase of the appointment process. Let's kind of review the next step and the procedural issues that will go forward. In front of you, you have a ranking form. It is similar to what you received a few weeks ago when you were determining which candidates would be interviewed, and now you're down to two. Okay, before you, you have some options. Option number one is that you can rank your preferences number one and preference number two. Okay, so that is, if you believe both candidates are qualified to serve as your city manager, then you rank 1 and 2. Your second option is that if you believe only one of the candidates is qualified, then you do not, you can rank just one. So that is an option for you as you begin your deliberation and your consideration of what you believe is the best candidate for the city of South Daytona. The third is if you believe neither is qualified and meet the qualifications, then you do not have to vote for either or rank either. So that's where we are right now, is that in your deliberation is You're now getting at the point of deciding whether or not either of these candidates could serve as your manager. I know that Mr. Simpson, as your city attorney, you may have some questions for him, or you may have some questions for me before you begin the ranking process. So I know we're available to answer your questions, and let me open it up to the floor, Mr. Mayor. Are there any questions? Okay.
I'm not seeing any. Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Scott, do you have anything you want to add?
No, I think he addressed everything. I was going to touch on the charter, but Ken did that, and it's up to y'all now to rank and discuss.
Just so I'm clear, one of you can answer this for me. We can have discussion prior to ranking?
You can.
Sure.
So council can have that discussion right now, and then after the discussion, you can rank. Or if you prefer to rank and then have a discussion based upon if there are consensus, that can be done too. But I've seen it done both ways.
Yes. Just, we all understand that at least 4 of you will have to agree on one. It has to be selected by a 4/5 vote.
I guess I can start. I normally speak last. I think we have opposite ends of the spectrum as far as personalities go. I personally would have liked to have seen additional candidates, only to give us more opportunity. I'm not in disagreement that they're qualified. I just wished I'd have had a larger pie to choose from. And I'll turn it over to you guys if you have anything you want to say. And Vice Mayor.
No, it would have been nice to have other options, but I think we can make a decision with what we have.
Are we looking for comments as to who we're supporting?
I think any comment.
I think you can have any comments, right?
Okay, well, I'll start. I enjoyed the interview with Mr. Lanham. I think he's an honorable man. I think he could catch on to anything real quick, even though he's been with a small organization. I think he's got a lot of integrity. But as I look at Les, I see somebody that's prepared himself well. He's identified problem areas. He's worked on a plan on how he would approach it. He's handled 6 hurricanes, I think, since he's been here. He's worked with minimal resources here in the last 10 years and never complained. He's had his nose to the grindstone continuously, and he's the one I would support.
We spent 2 days talking to both candidates and learned quite a bit from both candidates. I'm at the, speaking with Les. Les has been here for a long time. He knows what's going on with the city. He knows what the vision is of the council. I know I've talked to him, and he's talked to each member here on the council. And I wish also that we had a bigger pot to pick from. But I think that we'll do good with what we choose.
I echo a lot of thoughts. I think Ralph put it very, very eloquently. As you're saying it out loud, I don't think any of us should ever have to say having to deal with 6 hurricanes, so let's hope that, that's just a lot to handle in to itself. But I will say to the process, let me thank Mr. Parker and the organization. I think it was a well-done process. I think our applicant pool at the beginning, I think we were selecting 42 candidates, 44, something like that, candidates, and we got it down to 10, 8, this, that, and the other. And then, unfortunately, I was, unhappy that we had some people that made our short list that dropped out, because I think that would have been a good measuring stick for us for the whole process. This is not something this council goes through very often, once every few decades, right? But that being said, I think it's Bill and Les both had made our short list against that group of people. We just did not get to know a few other people a little bit further. I think that what stands next to me is, when we've talked about where we're at and looking at a culture change, that is not a criticism necessarily where we're at, but those are always going to happen when you have leadership changes. You have a police chief change, a fire chief, president of a university, a principal of a school. You're going to have culture changes. We have a city manager change. That's what's going to happen. I think, Mayor, you've put it, turning a page, and so that's where we're at. And I think I'll speak for myself. We're looking for a city manager who maybe just listens a bit more before they talk. I think the city manager role is a unique one, right? It's in tune with the citizens, but also protective of the council, has to follow the direction of the council, and there's a yin and yang with that, and maybe at times we've gotten a little out of whack with that, and I've been impressed with the interview today, quite frankly. I thought we had a candidate who definitely listened more, and I thought had a culture that we're kind of looking for. I also think we need a city manager that is close to the people, and I think current city manager is that and has been that, but after 30 years, you're going to ruffle some feathers, you're going to have some relationships, you're going to have some things. I think some of us probably all got that last night at our event, had people pulled to the side, and you have some that had some very strong opinions, everything's going great, and some that aren't, and I'm sure you could look at either other cities. I look at Mr. Parker after all his decades down there, and you could see the similar things. So, again, not trying to throw current regime under the bus, but I think you're looking for that, and I think one thing that stands out for me with Les is when people got me last night and pulled me off to the side is the responsiveness, he is out there, he is physically out there, just not responsive on the phone call, but he's the one actually in the ditch, fixing the tree, fixing the line, fixing whatever. And I think it'll be, if this council selects him, I think it'll be prudent for us to drive home the message that is continued to be important. The listen, the dialogue, not only with this council that we might want to improve, but also with the citizens and with those things. We know him. We know he's got his firsthand experience. So there's that. Mr. Lanham, Bill, so those things we'd have to take on faith if we go down that path. I think he is a respectful individual with some success with lots of success where he's at. But to me, for me, the decision is very clear. So.
I had shoes to fill in my previous profession. I worked for a man that was chief here for 24 years. And during that 24 years, I learned what to do as a chief, and I learned what not to do as a chief. I learned management style that I agreed with, and I learned management style that I definitely did not agree with. I knew that the city was taking a chance with me. They could have gone outside. Evan Durr and I sat down and chatted. Mr. Yarborough and I sat down and chatted. The city took faith in me and my abilities and my training and education and my love for this community. I think I served that position well for the 8 years that I chose to be there. It was very difficult for me to seek this position up here because I was perfectly happy being retired. And I haven't minced words, and I haven't been shy. I haven't been happy with Mr. Yarborough. He knows it. I know it. Everybody on this board knows it. His management of our city, he's done well for the city. He's done well for himself. Hell, I can't argue. He did well for me. I think that whoever we choose, and Mr. Lanham does not have the curve that we're looking for. We want somebody who's going to hit the ground running. I think Mr. Lanham is a very nice man. I think he's got experience in his community, but his community is about as vastly different of our community as you can get. I personally am looking forward to maybe visiting Fayetteville, West Virginia, because I'm ready to have a sandwich in
The secret society, I know. I want a Thomas Jefferson.
Are you going to base jump?
I doubt I'll base jump. I don't bounce well. But I think also that I agree with y'all on this council. Les has been in the ditch. When I looked up as a police chief, and when I looked up as somebody that was out there when the storms were coming down and I was being shoved out the car because Doug was driving, I would find Les standing out there with us. Now, I personally think Les is going to I'm going to hold Les probably to a higher standard than the rest of you, only because he's going to have to build trust in my eyes if that's who we choose. And being that, I want to know that I'm intrigued by his comment that he can hit the ground running. I'm intrigued by his comment that he could get started right away. He says he can do both jobs. You know what? When I became chief, I didn't have a number 2 guy. I purposely did away with the number 2 guy because I felt I could do both jobs. And probably for a year or two, I don't know what Doug would feel about it, but for a year or two I was successful, and then things just got overwhelming. And I think if we choose to give Les the opportunity, perhaps in the first year, he's going to make some changes, and he's going to skin his knees, and he's going to bump his eye, and you know, maybe that'll help him grow. I questioned him yesterday, and y'all know me, I don't mince too many words, but I questioned him about whether or not he had the steel in his spine to do this job, whether or not he had the steel in his spine to tell people no. And I think he's probably got some iron that needs to be tempered. And that's, again, if that's the route we go. I did not vote for Les the first go around. I want to see new eyes. He has promised me, and he's promised all of us, that he can look at it in a new way. Do I think we need some wholesale changes? I don't know how wholesale they are to be, but I think we ought to make some changes. I think there's some personnel decisions that need to be made. I think that if we give him that opportunity and we give him the guidance, I think he'll take some of our comments into consideration. I would not want this council to dictate who gets hired and fired. I told him yesterday that's not my responsibility. That's his responsibility. It has to be his show. It has to be his organization. Can we offer guidance? Yes. But I don't want to be the guy that says you need to hire this person, you don't need to hire this person, because I had that shoved down my throat a couple times. Sometimes I won, sometimes I didn't. But like I said a minute ago, I think Mr. Lanham is a nice man. I think he's got integrity. I think he's got the minimum qualifications, but I just don't think he has the experience that we're looking for. I bet he does well in West Virginia. I bet he does well in his local community and county up there. Seems to me like he's wearing too darn many hats. But I know that feelings. So, anybody else have any more comments?
I do.
Yes, sir.
You made the comment about this, said basically saying he can hit the ground running tomorrow. What he didn't expound on is we don't have any bridge projects in the works.
I'm sorry, sir.
We don't have a bridge in the works, either one. I mean, that is a very time-consuming issue. We have our 2 intersection projects that are wrapping up. We have no large projects that are going to demand his time to the extent that he has been. The water to sewer, or sewer to septic to sewer project that we have coming up, that's on private property for most instances. I don't see any big issues that's going to demand a major portion of his time. So I think he answered how he would handle that if he was selected, and I don't see an issue with it. I really don't. So
I do appreciate that, because coming from your life experience, you're the best person to speak to that.
I just want to make that comment. So.
Because let me chime in, that was going to be a question I had, because whether tomorrow is a figurative expression, whether that's tomorrow or January 1st or February, whatever that looks like, because to Bill's point, I had a similar personal experience in my career where I didn't backfill my old job, and when I thought, oh, I can do all this and stuff, and some of those knee scuffs and toe stubs was probably out of stubbornness, arrogance, and ignorance of truly just not knowing what I was getting myself into. So I think we have to be prudent to the budget and to the citizens that we serve, but also being right and fair to set him up with that. So I think we need to probably have if we get past this, and I can kind of feel where the energy is going here with our selection, truly dive into what does that look like for hitting the ground running. Because I think there's two parts of it. I think one is, Mayor, what you were talking about, hitting the ground running with the plan, the strategy, the direction, and the other is actually sitting in the chair. So, if that's clear.
We need to get his position filled so he can focus on city management.
I'm not in total disagreement with you, but I am in disagreement that if he's wanting to take on the opportunity to do both jobs, and listening to what Mr. Schoner just had to say, I'm of the opinion we should give him the opportunity to at least try.
Oh, he can
I don't want to set him up for failure.
a while.
Yes.
but-
Oh, I agree he could do it for a while, and that's what I meant by I did it for a year, and then I had to ask for help. And you know what? It may be less time, but I don't think it would take, I would hope it wouldn't take more than a few weeks to month, 6 weeks, whatever it takes to hire a new public
Yeah, I
works
think
director.
we could backfill him
Yeah.
fairly quick.
But that doesn't mean he couldn't start the job,
Right.
No, exactly.
Exactly.
so.
Well, to your point on the time frame, and again, I lean on Ralph and his experience, and Les shared himself about people coming out. Again, hiring at the holiday time is not always ideal, but people will want. Getting the wheels all moving in that direction and a start date after the holiday tends to make a lot of sense, and that kind of speaks to that 4 to 6 week time frame, Mayor, that you're probably talking about, that it would be that more than months.
Oh, I think backfilling is 4 to 6 weeks. I'm all about hitting the ground running next week. I mean, that's my personal.
Oh, yeah.
We're on that momentum, let's get it going.
The longer we wait.
As soon as we possibly can make this happen, it needs to happen.
So we're
I'm good with
talking-
tomorrow.
Swearing in,
Yeah.
like the next council meeting, or just?
Well, we still have
Yeah,
contract. and-
Contract,
and-
and exactly.
Yeah, so there's a period of that as we'll have to, again, assuming we're all rowing in the same direction here.
Well, I'll
there's
tell you
gonna
what,
be a-
let's find out if we're going in the same direction.
Okay.
Ms. Parker, I guess at this point, we can end the discussion and do our ranking sheet? Is that the way you see it?
That's correct.
So we'd do our sheet and pass them down to the clerk?
Give them to the clerk. And be sure you sign them, and because she'll read them into the public record.
Hopefully we do better than Palm County. We count 5 votes without a recount.
Mr. Parker, should I read them as to the council member that signed and then who they chose? All right, Councilman Cordier chose Les Gillis, number 1, and no other ranking. Mayor Hall chose Les Gillis, number 1, and Mr. Lanham, number 2. Brandon Young chose Les Gillis, only 1. Councilman Schoner chose Les Gillis, number 1, and Bill Lanham, number 2. And Vice Mayor O'Neill chose Les Gillis, number 1, Mr. Lanham, number 2.
I would think you would probably want a motion and a second and a vote
Accept the votes?
to offer the job to Les. Basically what you're doing.
Okay. Mr. Mayor and members of the council, if you'll recall, I did provide you with a suggested motion. that you authorized, and I think it's Councilmember Young, to enter into negotiations of the contract and bring the contract back to the City Council. And it would be, insert Mr. Gillis's name into that motion.
Well, I don't happen to have the copy of that. Has anybody
Okay.
got a copy of it?
Unfortunately not. Okay, so I can quote you the motion. Okay, authorize Councilmember Young to negotiate on behalf of the City Council of the City of South Daytona a contract with Les Gillis and bring that contract back to the City Council for approval.
We need a motion, and we can, second, and we can discuss that, right?
Correct.
Move to approve.
Second.
My question is there a time limit on that? In other words,
That's up to the-
could that be done in the next hour? Could that be done in the next week? Is there a?
Well, I've given y'all, did everybody receive
Yes.
the contract?
Right, sample
Okay,
contract, yes.
Sample contract. That was based on the Marco Island, which Ken provided. I made some modifications with Trudy and Kevin that we thought were in the best interest of the city. Two things. One, I think part of the policy or the procedure y'all basically approved that came from Ken indicated that there should be at least 24 hours of consideration between once you receive the contract before you actually vote to ratify and approve. Secondly, the contract provides in there that the applicant, Les, has been provided reasonable opportunity to have the contract reviewed by an attorney. So given those two issues, and maybe it's better not to try to get a contract done, signed, approved in 1 hour. But we could have I don't anticipate an extended negotiations. We could have that for sure, the first meeting in December, or we could have, if you would like to have a special called meeting as soon as the contract is, negotiations are finalized with Les, to bring it to you with a 24, 48-hour notice on a special called meeting for ratification.
Scott, I know with my employment contracts, especially on severance, so it's on the back end more, but you usually do a 7-day revocation period too with that too, so.
Those aren't in the employment agreements as much as they are when you enter into a separation agreement when the employee's leaving.
Correct.
You have that 7 day, at the
Correct.
tail end.
So I'm not dealing with that necessarily on the.
No, not necessarily with this.
Okay.
Because that's also a waiver of rights. You're
Correct.
waiving a whole, it's usually a complete waiver of any
Well,
and
and
all
if you're over
rights.
4, you got the whole 21 days after that, so you
Yeah,
got a whole
yeah.
other thing there too, so. But, yeah, I mean, I'll be honest, my mindset was to go, it was the wish of the council for me to go into negotiations today, but I'm with the city attorney that I don't think we're gonna get something signed, sealed, and delivered today, but that could mean within a few days. Now, whether that was for our special, or for the 13th and have this all wrapped up, done, and.
You mean the 11th?
Forgive me, okay, whatever that, yeah.
I don't see anything wrong with starting negotiations, and if Les is agreeable to the terms, let him make that decision, whether he wants to give it some time.
I think you want to give somebody time to decide whether they need time.
Well, he can have the choice today.
Yeah, but that's not time to think about it. I think it's good for everybody to, I think when you have a contract that's entered into quickly and he doesn't have a reasonable opportunity to have an attorney review it in an hour. That's not realistic. Now, he would have to waive the opportunity to have an attorney review it.
Right.
So my advice would be probably not to go down that route, to try to just give him time. I've already got a couple of attorneys in mind who do that type of stuff if Les wants a recommendation, so they can review it and have comment. It makes the contract that much more legal, as opposed to something that's signed, sealed, and delivered within 1 hour.
And I
So who
agree strongly with that, because
who
if
compensates?
we're all thinking,
Les pays for his attorney.
Okay. Les pays for the attorney?
yeah, we all think this is all gonna be great, but if for some reason things go sideways 6 months from now or a year from now, we're dealing with the severance, we do not wanna say, I signed and sealed that on that day. I'd much rather it be 2 or 3 days on the front end here is gonna help us on the back end, I can see.
That's correct.
So, I don't, honestly, in my employment agreements, I don't ever let them sign them that day. I I say take it home, sleep on it, have a review council, because then I want to be able to have a document that I gave you this day, and even if it's only just 24 hours or 48 hours, that gives me a lot. That's always been the legal counsel I've always been given.
So to put it on the agenda, it would need to be signed, negotiated, well, wait a minute, he can't negotiate it, Brandon can't speak on our behalf.
He has general negotiating parameters, I think.
But
based
we
on
have,
your-
we have to approve it.
You have to approve the contract, yes.
Correct.
It's coming back for your approval. But y'all, I've seen a budget floating around. He knows the parameters. We can discuss that further today. I have a couple suggestions. With the last time in Holly Hill, when we promoted from within, I got some suggestions of things we may want to talk about. But the idea is let Les and Brandon and whoever else Brandon wants with him to sit down, come back with an agreement within the parameters that this council sets. Part of that parameter is the budget, you've already said, that's the financial parameters. And I know like what we did in Holly Hill, they more or less said, look, this is what we're spending. Here's the dollar amount. Now, you can shift this away any way you want, but don't come back with something that is different than that dollar amount. You know, it could be lower retirement, higher salary, lower salary, higher retirement, whatever the case may be, but we're not spending more than this. And so that's how we did it in Holly Hill, seemed to work. But you've set a maximum parameter. My suggestion is let Brandon go, sit down with Les, come up with what Les would like, what Brandon's willing to agree to and recommend back to this body, and then y'all finalize it.
And why can't we do that today?
Because he needs more than an hour to think about it.
Okay, but we can agree on the terms of the contract.
But his attorney may have additional terms they want in there.
We all can agree on the terms that I should be working with
Yeah.
him. And yes, I expect that I would be going in and having conversation with him today. But as we all go to our homes tonight and go light a Christmas tree, he will be having a document that's within those parameters, assuming that then he can think about and then come back within a period of day 2, 3. I mean, what are we talking about here? We're talking about Friday, so he's not going to get into an attorney today, so we're talking Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, something like that. We could get something very turned around, and so that meeting on the 11th.
Well, it would have to be on the agenda by the 4th or by the 6th, right?
We can add it.
We could add it,
Yeah,
and
we can
had
add
to
it.
withdraw it if we had to.
Yeah. It's, as long as we have a scheduled, advertised meeting, you're always allowed to add things on the agenda, even the day of the meeting.
Debbie, do we have a copy of that budget anywhere nearby?
I don't have it with me.
So, just so I understand, we can pass this motion now
Yes, absolutely.
and then have further discussion about that while Debbie retrieves that document?
Sure. I mean, there may be some discussions we want to have about this form agreement I provided to you. There may be negotiating parameters you would like to discuss with Brandon, so he knows the parameters. Yeah, absolutely. This motion basically says,
That we're going to offer Les the job.
offer Les a job, Brandon's the one we want to go, discuss on behalf of the council.
Anybody else have any other discussion? I'll call for the vote with that one, please. Debbie, roll call vote.
Just a second. Councilman Young.
Yes.
Councilman Cordier.
Yes.
Vice Mayor O'Neill.
Yes.
Councilman Shoner.
Yes.
And Mayor Hall.
Yes. Motion carries 5-0. So now we can take a minute and get that document, and we can, while you're getting that, we can,
Do you have it, Trudy?
you have copies for all of us?
You want to discuss the contract?
I would.
I'd love to. So I want some guidance.
All right, so you're gonna negotiate this thing. You want to start off? Or do we need a motion to start to have conversation?
No.
All right.
So I'll start it off. I appreciate the document that Mr. Simpson and of course everybody else who's been involved. And then I had gone through, of course, current employment contract on a couple of occasions, current city manager, and I think you had shared in previous examples a couple other contracts. They seem very straightforward. Again, it's documents I'm familiar with. Nothing seems to draw out. I know, of course, we can talk about it if we need to, but we probably, the current city manager's agreement has some things in there that we would either want not going into a new one or we'd want to adjust, and they seem to properly not be in there. I guess the question I had was, right away, I mean, go by pages, but page 1 to me, nothing jumped out at me. Page 2,
Well, none of them are numbered, so we got to make sure we're on the right one. None of these pages are numbered.
Really? I
No.
numbered them.
Remember we talked about doing that? Do you see it on my printout?
That's your printer.
No.
it's not on my printer either, but
Yeah, I don't know, I've numbered it.
We had that discussion.
I had it right there.
See?
I was also on time, so,
You knew where the train was.
I did know. And I had to go over it twice. I had to go, so, anyway.
Okay,
This
so you might
page, I didn't see, this seemed pretty boilerplate.
So we'll call that page 1.
Page 1, duties. Section 2, terms of agreement. Again, at will, Section 2, paragraph A, the last sentence there, at will basis, and that will serve at the pleasure of the city council. Exactly what you want from an employment agreement, and coupled with Florida law and what I understand our charter. So, nothing wrong.
While we're talking about that, can we make this, you used the word "he" in there? Can we find
Okay, if you want.
I do.
I just knew there was 2 male candidates. That's what I chose he. I could go he, she, if you want.
No.
Well, it doesn't sound very appropriate.
All right, we'll leave it then. I don't like it because it just carries on to what we were talking about earlier with the charter.
I think this contract actually had he, she, /
Yeah, it does. And it's his agreement, so, but
Yeah,
the
that's right.
boilerplate should be he, she, and
Yeah.
then we should, So nothing jumped out at me there. Salary, section 3, we'll leave till Trudy comes back with those numbers, the line that they're paragraph A. Paragraph B, last sentence in there, so it talks about, I'll read real quick. The city, at its option, may review the said base salary and/or benefits of the city manager, increase, decrease in such amounts to such extent as the city council may determine desirable at the basis of the performance of the city manager, which I'm sure we'll have a conversation around the whole performance and tools there. In the city council's sole and absolute discretion, nothing herein shall require the city to increase the compensation and/or benefits of the city manager. My question, there was in one of the other supplements, and actually in Joe's current agreement, it talks about a specific date. So my question there is when to implement. So do we want to be specific where we say we do this with the other department heads, we do this at annual raise time, we do this on their anniversary date? There's just no specificity with a date in which we would do a increase. And my assumption is we would want this to be not a budgetary nightmare, so we'd want to know what we're doing doesn't throw off budget, so.
Right. The next section, 4A, says the city council shall evaluate performance of the city manager within the first month following the anniversary of each employment year.
Correct, so I have that highlighted, which
So-
goes back to my point. There is no absolute tie-in that those are together, and again, my personal experience, I do performance evaluations at a different time in which I do raises, so it
Okay.
doesn't, it's not clear that those two are absolutely
So when it
tied.
says the council may determine desirable on the basis of the performance of the city manager, do you want to say basis of the city council's performance evaluation? And then that ties into,
Well, we say in the current agreement, page 3 of Joe, employee's salary shall be increased annually effective August 20th of each successive year according to the average merit increase provided by department heads of the city during the
Right.
previous 12 months. It's very specific.
it is, and under Joe's, he basically got what everybody else got.
Correct.
So there was not a separate determination. This contract and in discussions with staff, thought it would be better to allow there to be an evaluation, and then this council decides separately what the city manager's
Completely agree.
thing is. So that would, I can tie that, though, it would be tied to the first month within the first month of the anniversary date, because that's when the performance evaluation is done. And I can tie Section 3B to that performance evaluation.
Okay.
If you-
Where I'm going, because I completely agree. I don't want it to be automatic. I don't think this council necessarily wants it to be automatic. We want to have performance evaluation and have judgment there. Again, I was assuming we'd go into an agreement sometime in December, January. That is not with a budget cycle. So that's all I was trying to address, is
Right.
that, do we want to be specific with a date there?
I'd have to defer to Kevin on that.
Would we want to make it coincide with the general employees' raises?
No.
No?
No, because the city manager's the one that in theory does the budget, and basically dictates what the other employees are going to get. So if the
We
other-
said coincide, but not be identical to.
Okay.
Just timing-wise.
Okay, timing-wise, all right.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for timing.
Coincide, yeah.
Well, let me just tell you, as a former employee that had multiple promotions, I had an anniversary date that was this date, and then I had a promotion date that was this date,
Yep.
and the two were not even close. So I agree, if we're going to set a date, since Les is an in-house employee, is it his current anniversary date or his new anniversary date?
I would say his new anniversary
I would
date.
say is new too.
Yeah.
He has an employment
new
service
anniversary
date, but his anniversary date of this position should be, I'm just going to pick January 1st.
Yep.
And his employment anniversary date is whatever it was, 90,
Right.
93.
Just want to make sure it's clear, because that was what I worked under.
Correct, correct. And I would lean on True from an employment standpoint. Do you have?
Hi, Trudy O'Dell, HR Director. Typically, what we do is you always keep your start date. That is your anniversary date here, and it never changes. What we do when you get a promotion is we'll do a 3 and 6 month eval to kind of let you know how you're doing. But then we'll try to work that start date, your original start date, back in. That's how we do it here. Just a suggestion. But we can,
When do everybody get their? When does everyone get their raises?
on their merit. They get one raise on their anniversary. The merit goes on their anniversary, and their COLA goes October 1st. So 2 different dates.
So in theory, if
Absolutely. Yeah.
The council can provide whatever date you want to be the key date within the contract. That's not an issue.
I think the question is, from a budgetary standpoint, if they do you're going to do your budget effective October 1st. If they do their evaluation, say the month of January the following year, and then come up with, evaluate what type of raise to give, you would have had to have budgeted something in October for that raise.
Correct.
So, I mean, it's almost ideally, it would be great to do an evaluation in you've done with the budget.
Budget's done in, August or
Yeah,
September?
so it's almost like to do an evaluation in July for that raise to take effect October 1st.
see, that's what I'm.
That would make
My experience at Emerald, my board of trustees does the president's review in February before they pass their budget in March, but that raise doesn't happen till July.
same.
And he's in line with all the other employees, but they're building his raise at his board of trustees, like our council's the oversight, but they're doing that at the same time, but even though the increase will be months later, yeah, she had some exposure, the person could go sideways in those next 3 months, and you say, why did I just give them a raise? But,
We would do, assuming January 1st, we would do a 6-month evaluation, which may not be a bad idea since he's first started.
I was
And
gonna
then we do
recommend that
annual
anyway.
July 1st thereafter. Is that okay? Does that sound doable? Does that help you?
Yeah, let me just, for the record, Kevin Lewis, Finance Director. I wouldn't get too concerned with the timing of it, because realistically, I'm going to program something into the budget as an estimate anyway, not attempting to usurp your authority or anything else, but just to
You gotta have a
to
placeholder.
cover us as a placeholder. So you could have a difference where I may have estimated X and the council decides it's Y. But from a realistic perspective, it's not the end of the world if it's off a little bit.
But if they let you know during the month of July, then that can be factored into the budget? Or is it already going to have to be in the budget before July?
The budget's distributed from the manager to council by the end of June typically. So if they're deciding in July, it doesn't matter. There are changes made through the workshops and those kind of things anyway.
Okay.
Can I'd appreciate Mr. Parker's opinion, his experience with what he had down in Port Orange, on a timing standpoint.
I think this discussion, to be sure it's programmed into the budget is a good process. And so what you really have is that, if your effective date is January, then you're going to do a 6-month evaluation, and then that begins the programming. From there forward, it's 1 year. And so that would be what, from an operational standpoint, as well as, from your standpoint, you're giving that feedback. The initial feedback comes at the 6-month period, and then from there on, it comes at an annual period.
Correct. I know this is a little awkward since it's all very public, but that it also leads to where we land on a potential first-year increase when that could happen. And so, from a negotiating standpoint, so if we were going to put less into potential for raise this in the 19 calendar year or not, could be something, that's where I want to also lead to the conversation of evaluation, 90 days, 6 months, something like that. Where does that play that up? Or we're just going to say, you're not going to get it till your anniversary date of your position, then that doesn't become such a play in a negotiating piece. So does that make sense to my colleagues? So that's why I want to get clarifying on that point on dates.
And I'm assuming we're talking about the council meeting in July and not necessarily July 1.
As far as us doing an evaluation?
Yes.
Yeah.
Probably what I mean, looking at the way this thing is outlined, I think we would disseminate, we'd probably start discussing the evaluation in June, come to an agreed format, disseminate it, and then you would turn them in, and then they would be publicly discussed at the first meeting in July.
But in realistic, we're going to do this in, the first one would be in 90 days. That's what I'm hearing.
Well, I don't know.
Well, we were saying if we did a July, that would be a 6 month.
6 month one.
6 month, and then it would get him on a, it would
They're
serve
on
two
annual.
purposes. Yeah. And I think it was the Marco Island evaluation, they had a performance evaluation tool in their contract, which I will admit I have not gone through with a fine-tooth comb, but I've separated out. I thought it was a pretty decent template for us to start.
Right, well, what they were looking at was being sure that they had a methodology going in that both the manager and the council understood how they were going to evaluate performance.
Correct.
And that was important to that particular council, and that was also important to that particular manager to understand the performance criteria.
Correct. It's 5 pages, it's multiple faceted, it's simple 1, 2,
There's
3,
all
5
kinds
rating.
you
It's
can do,
it's
yeah.
pretty
Right.
pretty
And
good tool
it
that we
says in here that it's a mutually agreeable format.
Yeah.
That y'all will agree on, that's what I would anticipate occurring sometime in June. You would agree on the format of the evaluation, it would be disseminated, then it would come back in July, and at the first meeting in July, it would be discussed.
Yeah.
That's the, basically, we took out some things, but not a lot out of the Marco Island evaluation criteria. I think, maybe I condensed it down so it wasn't all separate, I just put in one paragraph, some of them, but, they said something about, in there, you were supposed to publicly submit your evaluation. I don't know what that means. I don't know what it means. Does it mean you can only turn it in at a public meeting? I don't know. So I took the word public out.
Okay.
And then we took out, what was the other thing, Kevin or Trudy, remember what we took out in addition? Let me see if I'll pull up the old form.
And then while you're looking that up, just for the rest of the council, I think the other place I have a question that, now it might get taken care of, but the time frame that we're talking about of annual employment and raise and all that is there in 3, paragraph B, section 3, paragraph B, section 4, that one sentence there that we just addressed there in A, and then C, right above section 5, where it says it is understood and agreed that if the city manager receives a positive evaluation from the council, city manager may, again, love the flexibility, may receive a salary or benefit increase, but any such increase is solely within the discretion approved at a public meeting. And again, I put time frame versus annual employment raise, question mark. But if we get it clarified there in those other paragraphs, that probably doesn't become.
I think what we took out, what was in, let me look up here. There was reference to a self-evaluation by the city manager, we took out. We took out the part about jointly setting improvement goals, because that's kind of implied, and I think it was addressed earlier. And I think those were the main things we took out. The thing about the publicly submit. Those are the things we took out.
Section 5, obviously, there's a blank line there in
Yes.
paragraph B.
The max can be 20 weeks.
That's what I wanted to clarify. That's state
State law.
law. Okay.
And the other thing that's state law is CI, the reference to Florida statute 443.036. Basically, and I can get you the details of it, but what misconduct is, what the law requires is if it being disqualified for unemployment compensation.
Okay.
Pretty high burden. But Marco Island also had the violation of the ICMA Code of Ethics, but I added to that as determined by the ICMA. ICMA determines if they had there was a violation of their ICMA Code of Ethics. I added to that any conviction, guilty plea, or plea of no contest to any federal, state felony, or misdemeanor, and a finding of violation by the state ethics law, a violation, I should say, of the state ethics law by the State Ethics Commission. I added those as additional grounds to disqualify for severance. And you could have a situation where you terminate somebody, terminate city manager, and one of these things is pending. You know, it could be an ICMA investigation, the criminal case, ethics case is pending. I've inserted language that says the severance does not get paid pending resolution of that case. We hold it pending the resolution of that case. And if it turns out in favor of the former city manager, then we'll pay the severance.
So that leads to a question I was going to have. In a leave with pay or without pay situation where you might have a criminal situation where it is going through the courts, we have no guilty or conviction. So what you would be suggesting is that we could terminate and then the pending.
Say you have
I use a situation. I'm going with one right now where
you have a pending criminal case.
Correct.
So you have a
It's
choice.
high profile of serious concern.
Yes. So odds are you probably don't want to keep that person employed.
Correct.
So the way this is set up, you could terminate. The question of whether or not you terminated for cause or without cause will be determined based on the outcome of that criminal case. And if that person is then found guilty in the criminal case, that would disqualify them for severance.
But we could pin the severance payment until the
Or
outcome.
hold it. That's what the contract says.
I thought
hold
we
it.
did that, didn't
Yeah, it's in there. It says it's held.
Okay,
You
right,
don't-
right. So I know it's a terrible example, but I've always used with some, the O.J. Simpson scenario. If he had been an employee of the University of Southern California, not their running back, he would have been an employee, been a faculty, you would have probably made the decision to terminate while he was going through the case,
Yes.
not wait. And at this case, then when he was found not guilty, you would have had to have paid the severance.
Right.
But you could have terminated at the time of the serious accusation because you do not want that person sitting on the dais with the accusation of...
Very true, and you certainly do not want to terminate and pay that person severance.
Correct.
That looks really bad.
Correct.
So,
Okay.
because, and I'll use Brandon's example there, because O.J. was found not guilty, does that mean the termination is overturned?
No, it just means it was without cause. They're entitled to severance.
Correct. And then if they wanted to do a wrongful discharge, that would be a civil case and a different thing.
Except that I've added language in here that says to be entitled to severance, you have to execute a release of the city of all claims.
Okay.
'Cause I never like to give somebody money,
Oh, yeah.
and they turn around and use that to hire an attorney to sue us. That
Yeah.
just doesn't look good.
Yeah, yeah, okay. Do we, yeah. E in section 5. Do we need to say anything about insurance there? And I just had my note off to the side, insurance, so I need to read it again, but do we need to specifically address insurance? Personal leave benefits upon issue.
As I read that, and we talked about this one, the idea was to say that when you separate from the city, the only thing you get is severance and your PO accrual.
Correct.
That's it. Those
Okay.
two things. That's
I'm
it.
good. We're not going to cover your insurance.
We're not going to cover Section 18 again, of the current contract.
No.
Oh, no, unless it's requested.
Okay.
Wouldn't my day.
And that's also the section where I said that, it says the last sentence says the severance payment shall constitute stipulated and liquidated damages and the maximum amount of financial liability for which the city may be liable in the event of termination or breach, and shall execute a full and complete release of the city.
Okay.
So-
Okay. If the mayor's still giving me the floor, then I'm going to continue to go through this. I didn't have any issues with Section 6. If anyone did, I know it's a sensitive subject, but the 60 days, all that, I had no issues. I'll go to Section 7. I know, of course, the first blank is a negotiated number, and of course, that'll be within the frame of the total budget. Those others with the general liability, I really don't want to get bogged down in having to negotiate. To me, $500,000.
It's not really negotiated. I think
know.
Kevin was going to get with our insurance agent and see what they recommended.
Okay. I considered 500,000, but I didn't know. Had you gotten an answer yet?
I have not.
Okay.
What you used to see all the time was 100, 300. I just don't know what the
Okay.
all limits are now.
Okay.
But before we flip the page,
Yeah.
could somebody tell me what the travel expense pursuant to city adopted travel policy is?
I'll give you the travel policy.
Well, is it an up-to-date travel policy?
What was that, 2 years
Just
ago?
We
modified
just
it.
modified
Yeah,
it.
we just
I
modified it.
know, out of state, out of county, somebody tell me what that is. Reimbursement, out of state, out of county, which is it, Kevin?
Mileage is out of county. Per diem is a set amount, it doesn't vary. And then whatever the actual expenses for registration, hotels, et cetera.
Okay.
And the reason the cell phone allowance is itemized separately is because, according to Kevin, cell phone allowances today are not subject to income tax, and therefore we itemize that separately, so it would be for a financial standpoint perspective.
That's not in the projected here, though.
Well, it may have been lumped into the car allowance, because the last one we had car, SAS, cell phone allowance. Car allowance, 9,600.
I got that.
Yeah, that's probably car and cell because it's lumped together now. We're broken out into, so
Got that, Brandon? That's both.
the car allowance of 9,600, I assume when the budget was put together was intended to cover cell and cell phone, car and cell phone allowance. We're just going to have to break that out now. Because it's currently lumped together as one.
Correct. The current contract doesn't separate the two, so those $2, that's part of what you could shift from one pot to the other, however the negotiations go. But the current allowance doesn't separate between car allowance or cell phone allowance. That's why it's just one
Tell
line.
me about the computer allowance.
Communications.
Okay.
Same thing, the current manager's contract doesn't provide for the communications allowance. So if that was something that in negotiations 1.5, that's one of the things you can shift between pots.
Just out of curiosity, I mean, from my CPA hat sort of, why wouldn't I shift everything to cell phone allowance since it's tax-free?
No, it's not.
There still has to
It's
be some.
taxable income.
I thought you said cell phone is.
No, cell phones now have become listed property just like a computer. If you buy a computer for the manager, that's not taxable. Car allowance is absolutely taxable. Cell phones themselves have become, the monthly service an allowance has become non-taxable. It's listed equipment now. So you don't have to
No,
withhold tax on
when
it.
you pay an employee a cell phone allowance, it's taxable.
The issue used to be with cell phones that it was not listed equipment, and that's how employees started with, if we were to buy the equipment, and he's correct, I think we've gotten the concept twisted. If we were to buy the equipment, then you start running into issues. And it was not listed equipment. So everybody went with cell phones. You can swap today because it is listed equipment and go with the allowance. It is still taxable if you're doing an allowance where the equipment itself is not anymore.
Okay.
When you pay an employee their cell phone or an allowance for their cell phone, it is a taxable thing, but it is not something that you usually give benefits on. So it's sometimes a benefit to the employer because you're not giving retirement on it. But it's still a taxable earnings. I could argue that in today's world, in 2018, it's a different world than it was 15, 20 years ago, since every 10-year-old has a cell phone, that you would do away with cell phone allowance to together. But on the other hand, there is actually a small savings to the city because we're not giving retirement, I assume. 'cause-
And it used to be that you paid on cell phones by the number of minutes, or, you know, had 100 minutes a month included, so you'd hear from employees that, dang, I've got 300 minutes, it's costing me extra money. Well,
Correct.
now it's unlimited minutes and
And data
unlimited
plans,
everything.
because I went through it
Alright.
all the road, giving people data plans up in their allowance, but that's, yeah,
All right, we can address that in the individual stuff.
Correct.
and
correct.
Just know the 9,600 is supposed to cover it all.
But to your point, Scott, there were, back in the day, you'd want to shelter some of that because it wasn't
Yeah.
taxable, so. so, all right.
On the leave benefits, I assume.
Before we go, can we
Yeah.
talk about professional dues?
Uh-huh.
Do we have a cap on that, on B?
9?
8B?
It's approved on an annual budget and line item basis, so I don't know that there's a contractual, there's not a contractual cap, it's just in the budget every year has to be approved.
And that is something I think we could address through performance evaluation and through the budget. My next question came to 12, but if you want to make sure everybody's good with 10, 11.
I was just gonna say on 11, I assume Les would start, you know, we haven't, when we drafted this, the idea was you're gonna accrue the PL time that you have, you know, if you had hired retained Bill, then he would start as a first year, you know, accrue that time. Would Les, I assume, just take his seniority for PL time accrual as it currently is, whatever, how many ever years he has in, that's where he starts at now as the city manager? Is that?
Seems very
That's why it's
reasonable
written. Let me
expectation.
put it that way.
Seems fair.
Well, if we were to hire Bill, I wouldn't have agreed with him starting off at 0 PL time.
Correct. So we
I- I
did
would've
negotiate
had-
something
I would
different.
have had, you know, 5 days or 10
And you
days
could have,
in there.
correct.
That would have put it in the bank. So with
No,
that in
that
mind,
wasn't, that's not what, you know, our PL accrual is a different number of years of service.
I'm
have
with
that.
you.
Yeah, so,
but somebody who was living out of state or living out of town may have a family illness or a family emergency that they would have to leave for.
oh, I get, I don't have a problem with that.
Without time on the books, they
It was
wouldn't
the
have.
accrual rate that they get.
The rate that they
They
accrue
accrue,
it.
would Bill have gotten the first year accrual rate? You could have put whatever you wanted in there and say, look, you start with 10 days, but you're gonna accrue as a first year employee.
And my point, what I would like to throw in the negotiations is that we take that same amount that we were gonna offer to Bill and give it as apply it to an extra bump to what Les currently has in his PL time. That's just
So an extra 5 or 10
an extra
days
5 or 10 days, something, I mean, we were gonna be willing to do that should we have chosen someone else. I mean, he's gonna have more responsibilities, he's gonna have more time, and you can't work 8 days a week forever. So just keep that in the thought there, Brandon.
Do you all wanna give some direction on the number? Do we have a consensus on 5 to 10 days? Does anybody have heartburn?
2 weeks, 10 days?
That's to add to whatever PL accrual he currently has.
That's my thought.
Is everybody okay with that?
You okay with that?
I'm fine with a week or so.
Okay.
You got that, Scott?
Yep. Got it. Health insurance, the same medical, dental that all department heads get. No,
Yes, no special,
nothing special.
Nothing special.
Nothing special.
okay.
Retirement is senior management for a retirement system, or they opt out, and whatever our contribution was to the senior management retirement system, we would contribute to a 401A.
One retirement system.
One.
Okay, yes,
Okay.
not 3.
Life insurance still has to plug in that dollar amount. Do you have any suggestions on that, Trudy?
Well, he's currently, he has 100,000 right now, so I would imagine you'd want to increase that.
You're talking about 14?
Yes.
My experience with chief executives is 1 million.
That's a lot.
That's a lot.
Yeah. In our rural, for sure.
It is, and it's not that terribly expensive. But,
Right now, when they get older, it is.
Yeah.
It can be.
well, I can tell you, I've seen something, and it's not, but I think the current one is what, 3 times?
The current contract is 3 times salary. Keep in mind that life insurance does create some tax implications.
Yeah, what's threshold? We ran into that. What's the-
50,000.
Correct. Anything over 50,000 is a...
becomes imputed income, the value of the premiums per the IRS,
Correct.
as they calculate it.
And I think tying it straight to salary, okay, I'm okay making some sense, but it's hard for you to then to go purchase a policy on that, right? Because you're buying a policy usually on a 10-year frame, a 5-year frame, something like that.
Typically, the life insurance allows it. It's not unusual for governmental sector for it to be based on salary. So there are typically provisions you can report annual raises and those kind of things. That's handled through Trudy. It is a pain in the backside in order to do so sometimes, depending on when raises occur, if they happen throughout the year, kind of a thing. But flat amounts are easier to administer.
Because right now, we're going to a plan like we're going to one time, so we had 50,000 max, and now we're having to tax every employee on their on the value.
Trudy is less, because Les has 100,000, so he's already dealing with the tax implications of that?
Correct. And it usually doesn't become an issue until you get a little bit older.
Correct.
Right,
It's a
okay.
little cheaper when you're younger. So.
As the employee gets older, there's frequently some automatic reductions.
Oh, absolutely.
And those kind of things that will
Correct.
kick in that you can't get $1 million policy or
Correct.
whatever at that point.
Okay.
So I'd say something that if people are, I would just throw in that number at what I'm familiar with. If it's $250,000, $500,000, something like that, so.
250?
I would say 250 is
250?
something I can swallow. I mean,
Isn't it twice the salary?
It was 3 times,
It's
I
3 times,
believe,
right.
in Joe's contract, but we had to lower it. I don't think, you had insurance problem issues, right? We had to lower Joe's, right?
Yes, we did.
Again, let me lean on Mr. Parker. Did you have some experience with what you see from other cities on this issue?
all over the board.
Okay. Thank you.
No good with
Very helpful.
About twice the salary.
Remember that comment earlier where I said you've been a lot of help?
He has 100 now, so it's more than I have now. You good with 250? Everybody good with 250?
250.
Yeah.
All right. Basically, section 15 just says, we're responsible for him as an employee.
Yep.
And I don't know if there's any other questions on anything else.
No.
Trudy, Kevin, do we have anything else that we thought we wanted to discuss with them? I think we hit a lot of it, but I just didn't know if y'all had any other comments.
Should we,
Well, I'll tell you one of the things that we kicked around. Sorry, Rob, did you want?
I was going to say, what's the process for the city manager to become credentialed with the ICMA?
That's something I was going to throw out there. Two comments. One of the things we kicked around, what we currently don't have, and I think we talked about it a little bit, we don't have a job description for the city manager. It's the charter and the ordinances we passed, but we don't, in Marco Island, they had an attached job description. We do not have an attached job description. The city manager also, because we don't have a attached job description, according to Trudy, the city manager's position is not included in any pay study that's ever done, evaluation study. So,
Joe's contract called for it
to be added.
Correct.
So, we were thinking, we just default to basically the city manager's job description is what's in the charter. If you want the staff to come up with a new job description, different job description, we could do that. Have to be consistent with the charter, obviously, but,
Well, the charter's pretty definitive, isn't it?
yeah, I think it is.
Yeah, so why don't we just
That's what
refer to that?
That's what, I just wanted to tell you, one of the discussions we had.
Yeah.
And what we did in Holly Hill, along the lines of what I think you mentioned, we're going to mention, is when we hired Joe Forte, he was a firefighter, fire chief at the time, and became city manager, and I can't remember what exactly it was, but there were things this city commission in Holly Hill wanted Joe to attain in terms of education / certifications, and there were dollar amounts of raises tied to attaining those goals. I don't know if there's anything that we would like to put into this contract for less, such as, I guess we can go back and look at what the job description, what things we would look for. I think it was ICMA credentialed or something like that. Maybe Ken has some suggestions on that. But that would be the only other thing that I've seen done. When you promoted from within somebody who didn't have all the credentialing that you were looking for, there was, if you can get this credentialing, we'll raise your compensation by a certain dollar amount.
So like salary incentives have a
Yeah, it would be,
a section for,
I think with Joe, it was, you attain a certain ICMA certification, we'll increase your compensation $5,000, something like that. And I can go find exactly what it was. I can look up, and that was the first time Joe Forte was a city manager in Holly Hill, so it was a while ago.
I would think
If
that
I-
would be something you would naturally pursue. I mean, it doesn't have to be tied to a raise.
To Ralph's point, I don't like doing a raise,
Okay.
because I set the precedent that then every time someone on your staff gets some type of certification or qualifications or initials after their name, they're gonna expect some kind of
Well,
increase.
what it was is,
It's a minimum
we pay Joe
qualification.
Forte less
I understand.
than what a city manager would get. You wouldn't do that and pay them within range of
Right.
your,
Correct.
your
Well,
as
carrot
city
and
manager.
stick, I'd rather just go ahead and have the stick. I'd rather go ahead and just be a fair compensation. These are our expectations. If you don't meet them, they're gonna come back with the stick later.
I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
Makes
because it has a tendency to mushroom.
Correct.
As we know.
And to your point, I'm looking at the charter, again, to forgive the HR lingo, but your position description is usually going to have your TDRs, your test duties, responsibilities. The charter speaks to that. If you look at 703, 704, 705, power and duties, delegation of duties, and accountability to the council, that's the task, duties, and responsibilities. Copy and paste that out there, be consistent with the charter, done deal. Your second part of your position description is usually your KSAOs, the knowledge, skills, and abilities. Those are the things we're looking for, your educational requirements, the certifications, those kinds of things. So to just lean on strictly the charter as our position description, I think only meets half the bill. And to answer to your point, bring in copy paste, stay consistent, and then add those KSAOs, and then address those certifications and credentialing that we're looking for. Does that answer your question, Ralph? I mean, I think.
Okay. Trudy's going to prepare the job description.
But not documented in the contract.
Do you want to attach to the contract?
Oh, I don't think
No,
so.
okay.
Because his position description is a living document. Anyone's position description, to a degree, should be a living document as we feel a need. His employment agreement's his employment. We just want to say, we're going to do evaluations, we're going to hold you accountable, these kinds of things.
Yeah, pretty much his job description is whatever the majority of this council says it is.
Correct. But his employment agreement is not as a livable document as a position description would be.
Okay.
Would be my 2 cents. Would you agree with that, Scott?
Yes.
Okay.
Any other questions, comments?
And the whole performance evaluation document that we bounced around for clarity, that doesn't need to be anything negotiated or anything. That's something this council can address at another time leading up to. We can
Exactly.
purge it out,
They-
clean it up.
Yeah, Marco Allen actually had it attached.
Right.
And I took it out.
Correct. Correct. But I want to
Thought
be
we
clear,
might
I
have
mean,
bogged down on that.
in the conversation, the negotiating with Les, like, you will have a performance evaluation. This council, it will be a collaborative of us,
Do you know, what it says in here, and if you wanted it to be an evaluation as this board determines, we say, in section 4, it says, the city agrees to conduct performance evaluations of the city manager on a continuing basis in a format acceptable to the majority of the council. So that's your format, okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
So I'm going to take out, under BI, under section 4, it says, each member of the city council shall submit a written evaluation in a format mutually agreed to with the city manager. Delete that then. You all want to unilaterally decide the format of the evaluation.
I think that each member of the city shall submit a written evaluation in a format mutually agreed to with the
So
city.
what this says is we're gonna have a form, the way I read this, we're gonna have a form to complete. And you're saying you
Absolutely.
wanna take that out?
No. It says that the form that you're going to complete is going to be something that you agree with and the city manager agrees with.
I'm
But-
okay with that.
Oh, I'm
But I
okay with
thought
that.
Les said, Brandon said it should be something that this council dictates, this is the form we're using.
Oh, no, my implication is that I think we all should be on the same page. That's fair to any employee.
Okay, when
But
you
I
said
was
y'all
implying
and you included,
We're,
okay.
we're gonna be in agreement. In the 50-50 relationship, we're gonna hold 51%.
Okay, all right, okay,
Yeah.
okay.
I mean, if he says, I don't want this in there, and we feel strongly about it, it's gonna be in there.
Okay,
Yeah.
sounds good.
But he should know what he's getting measured by.
Right, I agree, okay.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure we were consistent in this document,
Correct.
which this body wants. All right.
Does that answer your question, Mayor? You good with that?
I was good with this.
Yeah, okay. But I also want us, what I was implying, guys, I want us all to be using the same form in agreement,
Oh, absolutely.
not
Oh,
having
absolutely, yes.
5 different.
Yeah, I was amazed at the variety of evaluation forms you can have. They're all over the board. You definitely want to have just one that everybody works from.
Oh, yeah. Well, some will want check boxes, some will want open-ended, some,
Yeah.
it's,
Any other thoughts or comments? Ralph?
Not regarding this contract, no.
Okay,
I think we covered it.
all right. I'll make these changes and, so just go and work on it right now.
Just out of curiosity, has anybody told the candidates?
I was just thinking that. Are they sitting out there waiting?
They're both waiting, but until you finished your discussion, I thought it would be inappropriate for us to let them know, but as soon as you
Well, I'm
finish your
sure in
discussion.
today's technological world, they know.
Well, actually, they have been told, do not listen to the council meeting and all of those types of things, and both agree that they would not listen to your discussion.
what's the protocol at this point?
The protocol right now would be for us to, to inform the candidates, and the protocol would be for you to invite Les to come in, and then tell him of your decision, and I would tell Bill the council's decision.
Before we do that, we can talk about the money, right? I mean, this is, the way I'm reading this is the max that we've agreed to?
Yes.
Yes.
That's what the budget is based on.
That's the budget.
You have discretion.
Which is the max? 'Cause I'm not sure I want to start off with the max on day one. In fact, I'm convinced I don't want to start off with the max on day one. We didn't advertise this dollar amount as a starting salary, did we?
You advertised 135 to 150.
That's where I'm at.
Okay, that was the salary range that was in the job announcement, and that all the candidates understood that was the job salary range.
And that's where I'd like to start the negotiation.
I agree, that's more than 10%.
135 is where I want to be at.
That's a 10% bump,
Yep,
more than 10% bump.
yep.
To start? No?
Hmm?
Les is close to the 130 now,
Yeah.
so.
Is that in a salary or
That's
everything?
base salary, he's
Correct.
probably about 127, 128.
Somewhere in that
Yeah.
range.
Oh, totally.
Because when we had our conversation with Mr. Parker, if you remember our one-on-ones, I know mine, we were dealing with a little bit of a compression issue if Les had not been selected, and we brought someone in on the low end.
I'm still where I'm at.
Yeah,
I agree. I'm still at 135.
okay.
I don't care what percentage is.
Okay. Raise is a raise.
Raise is a raise.
We gave him 10 days.
And 10 days.
What's that?
Daytona health insurance,
Same,
Yeah, same.
the same as everybody
Is
else,
everybody
same as
else?
department heads.
And
are we open to negotiation on that? If that, if
Well, the negotiation, everything is negotiable, but is what I've heard is this council is good with this document. If Les wants to come back with a change, it has to be approved by this council.
I just didn't know if Randy was the parameters there.
Yeah,
I'm not inclined to extend it past the employee, if that's where we're going with this, because then we're treating one individual differently, and I've never agreed with that. It is what it is.
well, I'm not sure I got the question.
The contract says that we are going to provide Les with the exact same health insurance benefits that department heads get.
Right.
Trudy was asking, because I believe current city manager, we provide family coverage, not just what the department heads get. And Trudy was asking, is that something the city is negotiable to provide
Right.
more from? I said, Les can ask for anything. Mayor's indicated he ain't budget.
But doesn't it say in here that his family members are covered?
No, it says, you gotta read it carefully.
Where you at? It says in the contract.
It says, let's see, the city shall provide the city manager and his eligible dependents with the same health insurance coverage as provided to the city's department heads pursuant to the city's personnel policies.
Okay, so you can get the coverage for his dependents, but he's gonna have to pay for it.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. It's the same,
It's like
same
everybody
benefit.
It's second 12. I tell you.
Which- I'm all in agreement, I think, with the spirit of, and I'm just speaking as a councilman, not the negotiator. I'm completely in agreement with keeping the benefits as close, if not exactly the same. And I say benefits, all the things, as all employees. I will go out there and say, and this is just me putting my employment hat on and HR hat, I think we have to consider the salary. I disagree with Scott respectfully when he says a bump's a bump. That is a true statement. That's fine. But there's something there. And so if we're talking about the chief exec coming in at, I mean, I haven't done the math here, but I mean, you'd be talking, what, 4%, 5%? I mean, you're not talking a lot there. So again, I'm not trying to give away the farm. I think, yeah, this is first city manager position.
I
Uh,
think that in July, we could discuss it further.
Well, he's also going to be doing the role of city manager and public works director. I mean, he's at
For a short period of time.
128 right now. So, I mean, I'm willing to start a little bit more than the 135, but we can negotiate that.
What about the idea of Brandon going in at the 135 and we see what Les's response is?
Yeah. I mean, you're talking about, if you do, you're talking about a 5.5% raise. Most people expect any type of promotion. I don't care if you're talking about a secretary, you're talking about a 10% bump. Now, again, so maybe he's a well-compensated public works director. I don't know. I haven't looked at the benchmarks and all those things, so that all plays into that. I'm getting all that.
You have to look at that, Brandon, because he got a bump
The
for
deputy.
being assistant.
Fair enough.
Assistant manager, so.
No.
5%?
I didn't think he got a bump.
I didn't think so.
He did not receive a bump when he became deputy, but he had received a bump just shortly prior to that when he received all his certifications in floodplain management and those kinds of things.
Oh.
So, personnel policy, usually, typically we get a 5% here for a promotion. That would put him around 136, 5, somewhere around there if we went with just like straight policy, just a suggestion.
So that's a written policy, 5%? So I would go along with 5%.
Well, our range is 135 to 150. We know we don't want to go 150, so start at 135 and see what Les comes back at.
So where I'm at, I hadn't changed. I haven't changed. We have a test period here. And I'd like to see performance.
All right. Mayor, I don't disagree. Again, it just goes back to carrot and stick also. And I also want to be aware that if we look at 6 months, let's say it's being blown out of the park. What is our appetite, considering how tight the budgets are on everybody else to start with? Don't want to give away too much to the farm, don't get me wrong, but I see too much. I did this, again, my line where I see too much. We'll say, well, we'll take care of that, and then when the budgets don't, well, I didn't have any money to take care of you then anyway. So if our conscience is, let's just say, blows up park and they want to start making a statue of him in 6 months, you know, but we really can't get more than 3% or 4%, you know, I mean, so I just want all that in our thought process, because if you're gonna go to the carrot approach, you gotta figure out what's your appetite there. That makes sense, am I articulating that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Nothing's changed. As I heard earlier today, no is an acceptable answer.
And disagreement is an acceptable position.
There you have it.
There you go.
Mayor, members of the council, if it pleases you, let me go and inform Mr. Lynn
Thank you.
of the
Perfect.
council's decision.
Perfect.
And then, so that if he's got something he needs to do the rest of the afternoon, then he would have an opportunity to do that.
Very good.
Perfect.
Okay.
Thank you.
That's good.
Anything else to be discussed?
I think that takes care of. When he's brought in here, are we gonna talk about the start date between now and the 10th, or the 10th, or are we gonna try to tell him what we're looking to do?
My recommendation would be Brandon to have all that discussion as part of the whole contract. That's part of the contract term, you know, the date he starts. So I would just have, I mean, the direction was pretty clear, I thought, is that as soon as reasonably possible.
As soon as reasonably possible, either a special call meeting or at the latest, the 10th.
Or whatever, the first meeting in December, yeah.
It's the 11th in there.
11.
So,
If he wants
Well,
to.
we just had the
if
one
he wa-
meeting in December.
If he'd like to start sooner, I'm all for a special call meeting.
okay.
One more time?
If he's interested in starting before the next meeting,
Before the 11th?
yeah.
For the 11th.
Okay.
I'm all for having a special call meeting
Hey.
to seat him,
Okay.
if y'all are good with that.
I am.
I'm good with that.
Because there's really two dates. There's the date we enter into the agreement, is in the top paragraph, and then there is a commencement date, which
Right.
is really the first day of work, so
Right.
have to fill in both those. But those are things Brandon can handle through the discussions.
Right.
And I just, from a practicality, again, we have to public notice a meeting, how many days?
24 hours. Minimum. There's really nothing in the law.
I
Attorney
mean,
General
again,
says-
at the end of the day, I think the 11th is a good, I mean, we're really talking 7 working days between now and the 11th. And if we're going to allow, at least against some lawyer counsel and stuff, might Tuesday, I mean, is it that important for us to then special notice it? Let's say we bring resolution on Tuesday. Let me just say, get everything, we're going to special notice on the 5th, have a meeting on the 6th, just so we do this 3 days earlier?
I'd leave it up to him.
One thing we didn't talk about, the severance. The state law max is 20 weeks. That's blank.
Yeah, we put that in there.
Isn't it 6 months?
Yeah.
26?
No, it's 20 weeks.
20 weeks. Pretty sure it's 20 weeks.
Yeah, we did discuss it.
We did
Okay, so
discuss it.
you agreed to 20?
Yeah.
I thought 20 was where we were at.
Okay,
Yeah,
all right. no
24
problem.
right.
My bad.
I would, we could always go less than the max, but it's kind of a negotiating tool.
Right, yeah.
Again, and it's a fickle business. Look at some, I mean, honestly, it has been up here, but look at other cities and any other Tuesday night, you know. But, so I get why city managers want that protection, so I'm trying to. Leave it there. Leave it at 20. Now look, you know, no city manager's gonna wanna come in and start negotiating their failure, so.
It's like a prenup.
Yeah, I know.
I'm gonna say it's never gonna be an issue.
Huh?
we've got to look at it. It's never going to be.
Correct. And again, maybe coming out there, and we don't think it's going to be an issue, just come out there with the 20 weeks, be done with it, and not have it be a big talking point. So, I withdraw my suggestion.
But it was a good question to bring.
Well, again, if we're trying to keep a very simplified contract that doesn't have some of the bells and whistles that other contract, there's only so many dials you can turn here. I mean, there's blanks on here for insurance coverage for the, that's not necessarily overly negotiable. It's, those are, and we're not going to be flexible on the, the extra benefits. So.
Kevin, the insurance benefit dollar amount you have here, what is that based on?
That's including the family rate, that's what I was
No,
gonna say.
well, I'm looking at life insurance, and then I'm looking at medical insurance.
Yeah, that 22,000 is
Yes.
That's for family coverage, that's why it's so high.
So there would be a reduction there?
Yes. Yes. Do we have our parameters on the car and phone loans? Because currently, he's already receiving 800 for a car and 100 for phone. So he's not obviously gonna want to take a decrease in that.
Les is currently receiving that?
Yes. And 50 for communication allowance.
That was the question I asked,
Yeah.
and was told that was all inclusive, so.
And
He
Joe's.
was referring to Joe's contract.
The budget numbers in the memo is based on what the budget is built off of, had a similar layout to what the current
So
city
we're,
manager.
to keep the status quo, we're talking $1,800.
Yes.
It'd be 950.
950.
950.
12 times 100 is 1,200, and 12 times 50 would be 600.
For the two of them, and then.
Right.
Then it's on.
That's what he's getting now, right?
He's getting 950 a month now.
Right. So we're going to increase it from 9,600 to 10,500, or whatever it's $1,800 more, right?
11.4, right? 9.
11,400 is what he's getting now.
Yes.
Yes.
You're talking annual.
11,400 is what Les is getting right now for all his extra allowances. And we have a budget amount here of 9,600, so we've got a delta right there. But the delta is going to get made up on our overall budget through the medical insurance, which our medical cost is probably on a single coverage is what, 900?
At 706.91.
Oh, yeah, good rate. 7.
For a single
Well,
one.
plus dental for a dental separate.
706 per month.
Yes.
What's all the insurances, ballpark? 750?
Yeah, the general is
46.89.
So that's what, about $9,000?
So $9,000, so there's going to be about $13,000, $14,000 saved. right there.
Savings, yeah.
Yeah, that's a huge cost, that family coverage.
Yeah.
Oh,
Huge.
yeah. Because family's probably 1,400.
Yeah, 15 actually, I think. Depending on what plan you choose.
Correct. 'Cause we're providing Florida healthcare single coverage to free.
And it's the base plan.
So then if they won't buy up,
Correct.
currently the buy-up is paid for.
The buy-up and the family plan is current.
Is that what department heads get?
No.
Okay, so-
Department heads get the same as all other employees currently, but Scott and I had that discussion, and we figured let's just keep it department heads that way in case something changes in the future.
when Kevin says current, the buy-up, you're talking about with the current city manager.
Correct.
Not with current less the public work, correct? When we all say current, we're all thinking different people.
Yeah, I believe he's speaking to Mr. Lamb, and then he's gonna get less in front of him. Do we wanna discuss what we're gonna call Joe?
I thought that was already decided.
Is that me?
Oh,
Decided?
well, I thought we were talking about Assistant Public Works Director. If we went with this decision to keep the paperwork simple.
Yeah, you know what the contract says? The addendum to the contract?
talked about he would go to deputy city manager.
Yeah. It's deputy city manager for the sake of the tax and
That's-
sales tax thing.
Well, wasn't that a position we had to create?
Yeah, I thought we.
Well, we have it
To be
because,
simplified, we already had the Public Works position already there and,
In the senior
funded
management
and- yeah.
status, yeah.
I mean,
Exactly. I would like to go with assistant public works director, but I think Scott had a little bit of heartburn with that.
if you don't, I mean, if you don't think the FRS is gonna say anything, it's,
I mean, we're talking about 3 months.
it's,
I mean, yeah, it's not gonna make any difference anyway.
I can make a phone call, you know.
no,
I was gonna say, don't poke the bear.
yeah.
yeah.
FRS gets confused enough.
I know.
So you're saying what we call him with Florida State Retimer versus what we use
Yeah.
around
Right, we just needed senior
That's
management.
right, that's right.
It's a
I'd-
senior
I'd
manager.
I'd rather ask for a
Forgiveness.
forgiveness, yes, thank you.
I mean, it's
It
something
just
we
seems
don't have to
simple
establish anything.
because we don't have to, exactly.
I appreciate it.
That way there's no changes nor any changes back.
Correct.
Right.
So to clarify this, his new title is gonna be the Assistant Public Works Director.
If that's okay.
Doesn't change anything.
No, it's
It's just a name.
just a, yeah, just a title.
Mr. Lamb expressed his appreciation for being able to come and meet with each of you, and he wishes all of y'all the best, and he wishes Les the best also. So,
How did he do with it?
huh?
How was he with it?
Yeah, he was fine. Good. You know, as always, you know, there is that point of disappointment, but at the same time, he just wanted me to convey to you his gratitude and how much that he wishes the best for this city. And he felt like that y'all made a decision you felt was in the best interest of this city. So,
Good, thank you.
okay, yeah. And I also told him that there were some other opportunities coming open, and we'll keep him informed about those opportunities in other areas. Good. Okay.
Excellent.
Any other, do you have any questions you, before?
Well, you know, and I didn't bring this up because the way the vote kind of went, the way a few of us, I think, felt. But I'll bring up the nuclear approach. If we cannot get to a contract agreement with Les, no expectation that happen, but let me just go with the nuclear while we're all here. If that doesn't happen, he stays in his current role, we have a failed search, and we start the process over. Is that a,
Is
That's
it
the
not
way.
an option to go back and ask Mr.?
and that's why I said I should have brought that up before we regretted him, but I know the timing of these things are
I
always.
guess 4 people here would have to decide, this commission, council would have to decide whether to reach out to Mr. Lanham or new
Correct.
search.
But I
Only
knew that there were a
three
few of us who
Only
didn't even
three,
rank him. I
yeah.
know I was one who didn't rank him. I just went ahead and made that assumption, but I just want to speak
Okay.
my assumption that we would have a failed search, Les would remain as Public Works Director, and we would start the search process and not go back to Mr. Lanham.
Yeah, that is the total discretion of the city council.
Correct.
At your point of, if you're not able to reach an agreement, then it's up to the council to decide. And if you want me to come back, I'll then review with you any of the options that are available. You know, should
Yeah.
Councilmember Young not be able to get an agreement, and should the council not be able to approve an agreement?
So are you bringing Les back in, or?
Okay, when you're ready.
Oh, I think we're ready.
I'm getting hungry.
All right, we'll go.
I promised the police chief we'd be out of here by noon, and I don't want to make the police chief mad.
Yeah, you lied.
I'm already an hour past
I
that.
was gonna say, he might be late for that.
You know, he knows what I drive and where I live, so.
Correct, correct.
I don't make any mistakes.
And while he's walking here, I would assume, I mean, we really don't, we have made the etiquette here for things like tonight with our event. We don't have a new city manager because we don't have an agreement.
Right.
That's right.
Okay, I just want to make sure we're all on the same page there.
But
So,
on Monday night, when I had to give a spill to the Historical Society,
We
and
have
on
made it.
Thursday night, when I have to give a spill to the Citizens Alert Group, I'm going to be able to say that we have made a selection.
right. And I think we can say we've made a selection.
We have.
That's,
Did you
that's,
do that?
we
We
made
made
it.
a motion, and it's now part of the
Correct,
record, so.
correct, okay. and maybe we'll have a signed, sealed, and contract by all your meetings there.
If you get it done by Monday, I'll be shocked. Because we have to approve it. You can't, this is Friday, so, yeah. But I'm in agreement with Ralph. If it's the will of the candidate to move forward in a quicker than the 11th and post it, let's do it.
I'm gonna make a prediction that he's gonna say, let's go now.
And I think for the next 90 days, he can handle both jobs.
Here he comes.
Here he comes. Don't know how much you've heard. Les, welcome.
I've heard cheering and a lot of crying across the hall. So, I don't know what
I
that means.
assumed that the cheering was for Mr. Lanham and the crying was from your wife hearing all of this. Right?
It's, wow.
On
It's a
behalf
honor.
of the council, we would like to let you know that we have voted 5-0 to offer you a position as our next city manager.
I really appreciate that honor. I will not let you down.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And I know you're taller than he is, but you still have some big shoes to fill.
I do. You're correct. Absolutely. When he
So-
started years ago, the improvements that we've all made, we've all worked numerous years to make these improvements, and it will continue.
Well, we're looking forward to it.
Thank you very much.
And
Thank you for being here.
As we talked about, we will have our feet to the fire, you and I, right?
Absolutely.
All right.
Absolutely. Expect nothing less.
Good, good. Without further ado, I guess I can adjourn this meeting?
Just thank
You'll
everybody.
be negotiating with Brandon.
I'm
Okay.
sorry, Brandon's going to
Okay.
negotiate on our behalf.
Okay. Thank
Okay.
you very much. Again,
Okay.
thank you. I look forward to serving with each and every one of you. Thank you.
Meeting adjourned.
Thank you.
I'll get your page numbers in there. Okay. You know what was tough about that? Did you hear that?
You keep looking at me.
No, I was trying to reach out.